Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto was a bijuu warrior in Akame ga Kill. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by DARKCHILD 316, link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Skyreach by Sora Amamiya begins playing. Naruto, Sakura and Sasuke were disembarking from a large cruise liner at the imperial capital. After the three of them were checked over to a minimal degree by customs, they began to search for their client for their mission. They had been told the client would be a young woman disguised as a nun. Sasuke-kun, any sign of her yet? Sakura asked the last Uchiha, who was searching through the crowd with his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan activated in his right eye. No, not yet. She must be trying to keep a low profile for some reason. Sasuke said. Well, according to the intel on her, she's a part of a rebel group trying to overthrow this empire, not exactly the type of person who needs to be going around advertising themselves if you ask me, Naruto said, and both of his teammates nodded in agreement before a nun came marching up to them a few minutes later, having spotted them. Welcome to the capital, pilgrims from the east. How long was your trip? The nun said to the group of shinobi, who sighed in relief at hearing the agreed code between the client and themselves. It took us 3 long days and 3 long nights to make it to the ship, but the trip was successful. Naruto confidently said, and the nun smiled at hearing the correct code. Well, after such a long trip you must be exhausted. Come with me, my friends, I have a place for you to rest your heads. The nun said as she leads the group along after her, and the 3 shinobi were led into a closed bookstore where she revealed a hidden passage behind a bookcase that revealed a hidden room that led to an underground hideout. After being led inside, the nun secured the place before dropping her disguise and revealing her true self. The client was a young woman with pale skin, auburn hair and red eyes. She wore a butterfly headphone accessory on her head. She wore a vocalist-like clothing consisting of a white long-sleeve shirt with a collar tied with a red ribbon under a black vest, a red checkered miniskirt, and black leather below the knee boots. She carried what looked like a cosmetics box at her side, and she had a lollipop in her mouth. She also appeared to have a prosthetic left hand. So, you're the famous Team 7. Gotta say you guys don't look like much. The girl, Chelsea, bluntly said, and Team 7 just looked at each other and smirked. Well, looks like we'll just have to let our actions speak for us like we always do, Naruto said, and the Redeed smiled at the blonde's confidence. He sure knows how to talk the talk, but it still remains to be seen if he can walk the walk. Chelsea thought to herself before they were joined in the underground hideout by a young man. The young man had shoulder-length green hair, green eyes and red goggles on top of his head. He wore a long green jacket with a fur-trimmed hood over a white and red ringer shirt and blue jeans with brown shoes. He also wore gloves with metallic fingertips. Lubbock, there you are. Thanks for giving me the keys to let me get into your bookstore with no problems. Chelsea said to the now named Lubbock. No problem, Chelsea. So, these guys are the ones we hired, Lubbock asked, and the aforementioned Redeed nodded. Yeah, I was just about to bring these 3 back to the hideout, Chelsea said, and Lubbock nodded. Then let's not waste any time, Najenda is waiting to see them. Follow us this way. Lubbock said, and the 3 shinobi were led out of the capital through an underground path to Night Raid's hideout. After maneuvering their way around the traps, a task that was relatively easy for the 3 shinobi, the 3 soon arrived at the hideout and came face to face with the rest of Night Raid. Standing front and center was a woman with short silver hair and purple eyes. She wore an eye patch where her right eye used to be and a black suit that shows her cleavage. She also had a mechanical right arm. Naruto and his team correctly assumed this must be their leader Najenda. Standing to Najenda's right was a tall man who looks in his late 20s with blue hair and eyes and distinctive bull-like horns coming out of the sides of his head. He was also wearing a distinct white robe. At Najenda's left was a young woman with short blonde hair with 2 long bangs that framed the sides of her head and golden eyes. She wears a revealing outfit with a black tube top that shows off plenty of her ample cleavage, pants, boots and a scarf around her neck. To the blonde woman's left was a young girl with long black hair that reached down to her knees and red eyes. She wore a dark sleeveless mini dress with a white collar and a red tie, along with a red belt that has a red side skirt cover. She wore it with long black socks and black shoes. She also wore red gauntlets and black gloves, along with a long dark coat. The girl also carried a katana, and Naruto raised an eye at the overall attractive appearance of the young girl. To the left of the girl was a young man of average height with mismatched green and red eyes and medium-length brown hair with a cowlick that falls with its weight. He wore a traditional white assassin jacket over a slim purple hoodie and a black base layer shirt with black jeans. On his back, he carried a short sword with a chain-link tassel at the hilt in its sheath. At the young man's left was a young girl of below average height. She has very long pink hair tied in twin tails on the right and left sides of her head and big pink eyes. She wears a pink outfit consisting of a tied shawl with a high collar, a pink long-sleeved shirt, a gown and black stockings with pink shoes. The girl carried what looked to be a gun case on her back and she appeared to be wearing bandages on her right arm. Rounding out the group to the pink-haired girl's left was a slender woman with long purple hair and purple eyes. She wore a revealing sleeveless lilac cheongsam with detached lilac arm sleeves and white boots. She carried what looked like a giant pair of scissors on her back. She wore glasses and had a scar on her right cheek. "Boss, we made it back. These are the ones you hired for the job, the famous Team 7. Chelsea said to her boss, and Najenda nodded before she stepped forward and extended her mechanical hand to the leader of Team 7. "Naruto Uzumaki, Sakura Haruno, Sasuke Uchiha, I would like to welcome you to Night Raid's headquarters. I am the leader of Night Raid General Najenda. I look forward to working with you on this mission." Najenda said and Naruto shook Najenda's prosthetic limb. "Same here General Najenda. So, what do you have in store for us?" Naruto asked before the members of Night Raid looked amongst themselves and the dark-haired, red-eyed girl he'd been admiring earlier stepped forward, along with the blonde-haired woman and the brown-haired young man. "Before we tell you why we brought you here, first I think we should see if the stories about you and your team are valid. So why don't you three show us you are worthy of your title of Shin Jidai no Densetsu no Sanin, translation. Legendary shinobi of the new year." The red-eyed woman said with a cold look in her eyes as she drew her sword and the blonde woman cracked her knuckles while the brunette young man drew his weapon as well. "Always gotta be the hard way huh," Naruto said before closing his eyes and opening them again to reveal his Rinnegan eyes before activating his six-path sage mode and the members of Night Raid gasped as Naruto's power washed over them while the red-eyed woman didn't bat an eye. Sakura slipped on her fighting gloves and activated her strength of 100 seal while Sasuke activated his Sharingan and charged his body with lightning release chakra. The blonde woman then began to transform as her hair became longer and she gained lion ears, tail and claws. The brunette male then took his short sword and jabbed it into the ground. "Incursio." The brunette screamed before a blinding flash of red light appeared and the next thing Team 7 knew, the young male was standing wearing a bulky, streamlined aerodynamic draconian armor, sporting a helmet reminiscent of a dragon's head with clawed gauntlets and feet and a set of wings on its back. He also carried a large spear in his hands. "This should be interesting." The violet-haired woman, named Shield said to her teammates. "Yeah, no kidding. Akame, Leon, and Tatsumi all going at full strength. Boy, you almost feel sorry for these three saps." The pink-haired girl, named Mine chimed in. "Not to mention Akame's using Murasame without its sheath, meaning she has no intentions of taking it easy. This one could get really ugly, really fast," Lubbock said. "No kidding, I'll say this, Blondie and his team better be as good as they say they are, or they may not make it back to their home. They may end up going straight to the morgue," Chelsea said. "Well, let's hope it doesn't get that serious," Najenda said. "Given how strong Tatsumi, Akame, and Leon are and the level of teamwork they have, this one shouldn't last long," the blue-haired Tigu Susanoo stated. In Paku, Akame battle theme from Akame ga Kill Ost begins playing. "Naruto, anything we need to know about the three of them?" Sakura asked her teammate who observed their three opponents with his Rinnegan carefully before speaking. "The blonde has some sort of belt that conducts chakra, while the guy is cloaked in some kind of powerful chakra armor. As for the other one, she's got some type of blade with a chakra signature, so whatever you do, do not let that sword touch you," Naruto said, and the rest of Night Raid was shocked by Naruto's analysis. "What the hell, he just read each one of our Tigu's abilities with those eyes of his," Tatsumi said in disbelief while Leon growled as their strategy had been blown out of the water. "There's no way that's a Tigu. The blonde must have some sort of psychic ability that allows him to read others' thoughts and see through items. Something similar to the Tigu spectator, interesting," the perceptive Susanoo said as he looked on. "That's it Akame, the blonde's gotta go first right now," Leon said and Akame coolly nodded in agreement. "Understood," Akame said before setting her sights on the blonde and launching her attack with Leon and Tatsumi close behind her. Leon was quickly taken off track by Sakura while Tatsumi was easily intercepted by Sasuke who was in full-on Susanoo mode. "If you two want to get to Naruto, you'll have to go through us first," Sakura boldly said and Leon stared Sakura down while Tatsumi did the same to Sasuke. "Have it your way then, let's go," Leon said and she pounced at Sakura, who ducked underneath a brutal swipe from Leon's claws and the next thing Leon knew, she ate a devastating punch to the ribs that knocked the wind out of her before Sakura blasted Leon on the jaw with a brutal uppercut that sent the feline lady flying a few feet before crashing to the ground. "Get ready, because that was just a warm-up," Sakura said with a serious face, and Leon stood up with blood dripping from her lips before smirking at Sakura. You're a bit tougher than I gave you credit for Pinky. Gotta say I'm impressed. But it'll take more than that to put me down," Leon said before going on the attack again. "But Sasuke." Sasuke was squaring off with Tatsumi using his completed body Susanoo with Tatsumi matching him using his evolved Incursio armor. The blades of Sasuke's Susanoo were clashing against Tatsumi's Noonted long spear. Tatsumi aimed a devastating swipe at Sasuke's neck with Noonted that was easily deflected by Susanoo's armor. Tatsumi, in disbelief, tried another attack and attempted to jab Noonted into the heart of his opponent, only for the blow to be yet again deflected by Susanoo. What's going on? None of my attacks are penetrating through this armor of his. I'm not getting anywhere with this guy. Tatsumi said aloud. This is the power of the strongest technique of the Sharingan. The ultimate defense, Susanoo. Sasuke proudly explained. Wait, did that guy just say Susanoo? I thought there was only one Tigu called Susanoo, and that was our Susanoo. What the hell is going on? Mine exclaimed in shock, a feeling shared by the rest of her comrades watching the fight, especially the normally reserved Tigu Susanoo. Allow me to show you the true power of Susanoo, Sasuke said before Susanoo sprang to life under his command. Susanoo. Fist, Sasuke commanded before his completed Susanoo's fist lunged at Tatsumi too fast for him to react and buried itself into his abdomen, nearly knocking the wind out of him. Tatsumi, knowing he was in trouble, decided it was time to activate Incursio's trump card. You can't hit what you can't see, Tatsumi said as he vanished into thin air and the rest of his comrades smirked confidently. He's got him now. Incursio's trump card is invisibility, looks like the tide of this battle just swung and it's advantage Tatsumi. Lubbock said, only to notice the equally confident smirk on Sasuke's face. You think you have me at a disadvantage because I can't see you? The Sharingan sees all. Sasuke said before focusing his Sharingan and sweeping the battlefield with his eyes. He then slowly turned his head and smirked. Susanoo, turn and grab him, Sasuke commanded before his Susanoo turned around and reached out a gauntleted hand before, to the shock of those watching, grabbing an invisible Tatsumi out of thin air. Now, Susanoo. Crush. Sasuke said and Susanoo began to crush Tatsumi, who despite having his armor on, felt like he was being crushed in a death vise and screamed in pain. Tatsumi. Mine screamed and she immediately dropped her gun case and took out a large gun-type weapon and trained it on the last Uchiha. Just when she was about to charge her weapon and try to blow Sasuke sky high, he ordered Susanoo to release Tatsumi and his chakra avatar dropped the brunette before dispelling and Sasuke deactivated his Sharingan. Mine quickly ran to check on Tatsumi, whose armor had deactivated as soon as he hit the ground and she checked him over to discover that outside of some bruising on his body, he was relatively fine. Tatsumi, you okay? Mine asked the brunette who grunted and sat up. Yeah, I'll be fine. Hey you, would you back off all of a sudden? Tatsumi asked the last Uchiha who only looked dismissive at the question. Because there was no point in continuing the battle at that point. You were already beaten, continuing would have only added insult to injury. Besides, this battle was pointless, to begin with. You hired us to do a job, not prove how strong we are for the sake of pride. Be thankful I decided to hold back or things could have been a lot worse. Sasuke aloofly said stunning both mine and Tatsumi. He was holding back. If that was him holding back, just how strong is this guy or the rest of his teammates for that matter? Mine and Tatsumi thought to themselves, their comrades sharing that same sentiment. But Sakura. Sakura and Leon were both looking across from each other, with both of them breathing heavily, Leon more so than Sakura. Both girls were getting pretty beat up and had landed some pretty stiff shots on each other, with Sakura getting the better of it. Leon was sure she had broken several ribs and that she had a broken jaw, while Sakura sported several nasty cuts on her arms, legs, and torso, along with a gash on her diamond-marked forehead that was dripping blood all over her face. Well, I'd say this fight isn't gonna last much longer. So, I'd say the next move decides it. Leon smirked at finally having a good challenge after a long time. Kinda looks that way, Sakura said with an equal smirk on her face, and everything stopped for a second before Leon and Sakura charged forward. Leon reared back and prepared to swing her claw in a decapitating strike, but Sakura literally beat her to the punch and caught Leon right in the face with a straight right cross that sent Leon flying backward and she landed at the feet of her comrades clearly unconscious. She knocked Leon out with one punch, Chelsea said in shock, almost dropping her lollipop from her lips. And I thought Leon's strength was scary, she just took her out with ease. What does that say? Lubbock said with a hint of fear in his voice as he looked at the triumphant grin on the Rosette's face. The shocking part about it is, she was so at ease during the fight. Almost as if she was never in any doubt that she was in trouble. Shield pointed out. Could it be that she was holding back just like her raven-haired teammate? And if so, just how strong are these three? Nagenda wondered with her subordinates asking themselves that same question. But Naruto. The Ami Okiru from Akame ga Kill Ost begins playing. Naruto and Akame were locked in a fierce showdown with Akame using Murasame and Naruto having drawn his mother's dark-bladed katana and charged it with sage chakra, causing the blade to glow an orange color with cross-like chakra extensions at the hilt. Both the blonde sage and the red-eyed assassin showed no intentions of backing down as they matched each other move for move, with Naruto having the clear-cut advantage in speed and power, while the smaller and more graceful Akame had the edge in maneuverability and precision with her blade. Akame said before she and Naruto shot at each other, their respective blades clashing at speeds too fast for the untrained eye to follow as Sakura, Sasuke and the rest of Night Raid looked on. They both separated for a moment and circled each other before Naruto soon found himself on the offensive as he attacked with a series of fast yet powerful swings of his mother's sword. First with a downward swing, followed by a right crossword swipe, and immediately followed up with a crossword slash in the opposite direction. Akame somehow, albeit difficultly, managed to block each slash before Naruto extended his hand and used Shinra Tensei to send Akame flying backward. Naruto quickly sped after her, looking to follow up on his attack. As Akame nimbly landed on her feet, she had to quickly block another onslaught of slashes from the blonde sage. Akame kicked Naruto back in an attempt to gain some separation before going on the attack, knowing she needed to end this now. She slashed at Naruto's neck before it was parried by Naruto's blade. Naruto followed up with a quick slash at Akame's legs that she dodged by leaping up and over and behind him. "Eliminate," Akame said as she swung a decapitating slash at Naruto's head that, to her and her comrade's surprise, was blocked by a second-pronged blade. "Too slow," Naruto said as he turned and swung his mother's blade at Akame's chest, and the red-eyed assassin was forced to quickly jump back to avoid being cut in half. As she landed, however, she found two blades crossed in front of her neck and she looked back in shock to see the blonde standing behind her with both his blades at her neck. "This fight is over, surrender now. I don't want to go any further, but I will if I must," Naruto calmly said, and all of Night Raid was shocked at how easily Akame had just been beaten. "Did I really just see that? Did Akame just lose?" Chelsea said in disbelief, and this time, she really did drop her lollipop. "She didn't just lose, she was dominated, handily," Susanoo said, equally as shocked as his retreated teammate. "She stood no chance against him from the beginning. It was clear that your friend was outmatched from the moment she raised her blade against him. The mere fact that Naruto was only going at about half power means that this fight was decided well before the first attack," Sasuke said, and the rest of Night Raid looked at him in disbelief. He was only going at half power. Just how strong are these three monsters? Everyone in Night Raid thought to themselves as Naruto and Akame rejoined them. "I really hope we've proven our point, General Najenda," Naruto impatiently said, and the silver-haired general smiled in satisfaction and nodded. "You certainly have, Naruto. Any group who can not only face, but soundly defeat three of Night Raid's strongest effortlessly is definitely someone I wish to have on my side," Najenda said before extending her mechanical hand once more, and Naruto hesitated for a few seconds before he shook it. "Glad we've got that settled then, sorry we had to go so hard, but we felt it was the best way to get our point across," Naruto said in a much more friendlier tone. "I understand, I should be the one apologizing though. My team tends to be wary when it comes to allowing outsiders into our ranks, and they tend to go overboard a bit when seeing if they can truly be trusted," Najenda explained, and Naruto nodded understandingly. "It's fine, don't worry about it," Naruto said before turning to his rose-haired teammate. "Sakura, fix them up will you?" Naruto instructed, and Sakura, who by now had healed herself up, nodded before her hands began glowing with a green light and she walked over to the still unconscious Leon, who by now had returned to her normal form and placed one hand over her ribs while placing another hand on her head. All of Night Raid wondered what she was doing before a few minutes later she removed her hands and Leon's golden eyes opened and she sat up and breathed in and out and found, to her surprise, that her ribs appeared to be mended. She gingerly reached up and checked her jaw and found that it had been fixed as well. "This is awesome, it feels like I was never injured in the first place," Leon said in amazement before turning to the rosette. "How did you do that, Sakura?" Leon asked, and Sakura smiled proudly. "I'm a combat medic, of course. It's one of my signature techniques. Mystical palm technique. It allows me to speed up the body's natural healing process by sending healing chakra to an afflicted body part," Sakura explained, amazing Leon and her teammates, and this caught Akame's attention. "If she can do that with Leon's injuries, then I wonder what else she can do." Akame pondered as her thoughts drifted to a certain someone. "I can fix up your bruised sternum and back as well if you'd like," Sakura said as she turned her attention to Tatsumi. "Sure, I wouldn't mind," Tatsumi said, and Sakura's hands lit up again as she placed one on his chest and the other on his back. A few minutes later, his injuries had been healed as well, and he thanked Sakura for her help. "Good to see you're back at full strength, Tatsumi," Mine said before grabbing her head in pain. "What's wrong?" Sakura asked her fellow Pinkat, who waved her off. Don't worry about me, it's nothing. Mine dismissively said while holding her head, seemingly in deep pain, while trying her best to keep her eyes closed. These signs told Sakura all she needed to know. You're suffering from migraines, aren't you? Sakura simply said, and Mine's eyes went wide at how Sakura had figured it out before remembering that she was an experienced medic and sighing in defeat. There's no point in trying to hide it. I was involved in a life-threatening battle recently and the mental fatigue I suffered from the battle has caused me to have constant migraines. Mine confessed. Is that why your right arm is bandaged up as well? Sakura asked, and Mine relented, knowing that she'd probably figure it out on her own anyway. No, that was an injury I suffered long before that. I got my arm crushed and took a bullet to the shoulder as well. The injuries caused me to have some permanent nerve damage to my arm that doctors told me may never heal. Mine explained, and Sakura nodded. Hold still for a moment, Sakura said as her hands glowed green again. She placed both her hands on Mine's right arm and held them there for a few minutes. She then removed her hands from over her arm and moved them to her head. After a few more minutes, Sakura removed her hands once more and took a deep breath. There, that should do it. Try removing your bandages and moving your arm around. Sakura said, and Mine hesitantly took off her bandages and experimentally moved her arm around a bit to test it. She then prodded the sides of her head a bit before she smiled. This is unbelievable. I feel as good as new, almost like I was never injured at all. Thank you, Sakura. Mine happily said to her fellow Pincat, and Chelsea looked hopefully at Sakura. Hey, Sakura, was it? Chelsea asked the Rosette, and Sakura nodded before Chelsea held out her prosthetic hand. I was wondering if there were any limits to what that mystical palm technique of yours could heal. Chelsea asked the Rosette, and Sakura sadly smiled. Unfortunately, there are. The only injuries I can heal are internal or external injuries. My healing jutsu doesn't work on limbs that have already been severed. Sakura sadly said, and Chelsea sadly hung her head. But, while I may not be able to regenerate severed limbs, my teammate Naruto can, Sakura said, and Chelsea perked up at this and looked hopefully at Naruto. Well, I'm not a healing expert like Sakura, but I'm sure your injury is nothing my 6-path Sage mode can't fix, Naruto said, and he activated 6-path Sage mode for the second time today, and Chelsea found herself enveloped in Naruto's power. Well, here goes, Naruto said as he placed his right hand over Chelsea's prosthetic left hand. An orange glow surrounded her arm before suddenly, to Chelsea's shock, her prosthetic hand fell off and her normal hand restored itself before Naruto removed his hand. It's done. Naruto sighed before deactivating his Sage mode as Chelsea tested out a restored hand before clenching her hand to form a fist and smiled brightly. This is awesome, thanks. Chelsea gratefully said to the blonde, who shook hands with Aridid. If you want, I can do the same for your arm and eye, General Nagenda, Naruto said, and Nagenda politely held up her real hand in decline. Thanks for the offer, but I'm alright. I've long since moved on from the experience of losing my arm and eye. But it would seem there's more to you and your team than we first believed. Nagenda said. I'll say, especially you, Naruto. Anyone that can stand up to Akame in a sword fight and win has to have something special to them. And Akame's never lost a fight. Tatsumi said. That reminds me, how did you get behind me like that during our battle, Naruto? I never even saw you move. Akame questioned, and Naruto smiled before taking out the tri-pronged blade that Akame recognized as the blade he used to block her from behind. That's what this blade was for. It's called a Hiraishin kunai and it was one of my father's signature tools. When I blocked your sword strike, I marked your blade with a mark on the handle and it allowed me to teleport in an instant to any location where my mark was. Naruto explained, surprising Akame and her teammates at the aesthetics of the seemingly simple weapon. What about how you were able to see the effects of Akame, Leon and Tatsumi's Tigus, and how Sasuke was able to see Tatsumi even with Incursio's invisibility trump card activated? Shield curiously asked, and Naruto and Sasuke both closed their eyes before they opened them to reveal the Sharingan in Sasuke's eyes and the Rinnegan in Naruto's eyes. This is called the Rinnegan, the technique you see in Sasuke's eyes is called the Sharingan. Both of these sets of eyes come with a slew of different techniques, one of which give us both the ability to see chakra. Or any form of physical or spiritual energy. Naruto explained, and Sasuke nodded. Akame's sword had a very strong chakra signature, so did your friend Tatsumi's armor. We also sensed a chakra signature from your friend Leon's belt. Sasuke said, once again stunning Night Raid. Alright then, how about that Susanoo technique your friend used during that battle with Tatsumi? How do you explain that one? Mine asked, and Sasuke looked at the Pincat before his Sharingan flashed in his eyes once more. As Naruto stated before, the Sharingan gives me a number of advantages over my opponent. Being able to anticipate an opponent's moves and even copy other techniques chief among them. But the ultimate technique of the Sharingan is Susanoo. It creates a physical avatar that's not only a manifestation of my own will that fights on my behalf, but also acts as the ultimate defense, being resistant to all physical attacks. Sasuke boasted, leaving Night Raid speechless. Okay then, what about you, Sakura? How were you able to go punch for punch with me so easily? I'm pretty sure you don't have fancy eyes and all, so what's your secret? Leon asked a rose-haired medic who grinned. Remember how I said I was a combat medic? Well, my skills have offensive capabilities as well. By refining my chakra control and focusing it, I can enhance my strength to devastating levels. By activating my strength of 100 seal, I can release large amounts of stored chakra, which greatly amplifies the power of my techniques, allowing me to perform advanced medical ninjutsu with ease, as well as enhancing my already impressive strength and healing capabilities. Not only that, but with just a single punch in my normal chakra enhanced state, I could decimate entire mountains or kill a human being with a single blow. Sakura proudly said, and by this point, Night Raid was completely stupefied. And you didn't tell us all of this beforehand, because Lubbock asked in disbelief, only for the three shinobi to look at each other and smirk. Well, truth be told, it's been a while since we've had a decent challenge, and we were having too much fun. Also, we kinda knew from the beginning you were only testing us, so we decided to play along. Naruto confessed, shocking Night Raid. You knew. But how didn't Agenda, said, equal parts upset and surprised. Well, thanks to my buddy Kurama, it wasn't that hard to figure out. As soon as he told me that he wasn't sensing any negative emotions or any kind of true killing intent, it was kind of a dead giveaway. Naruto said, and Night Raid just shook their heads at how easily they'd been figured out. It seems you three ninjas are just one surprise after another, Agenda said. I'll say, now I see why you three were so easily able to handle Akame, Leon, and Tatsumi. Hell, you three probably could have taken us all on, and I'm still not sure we would have been able to stop you. Lubbock said. I'd have to agree with that statement. It's almost an unfair advantage that you guys can do so many things naturally that it would take people like us a Tigu to do, Chelsea whined. Wait, what's a Tigu? Naruto said, and Akame drew her blade again. I would have thought that was obvious by now. It's the weapons you saw us fighting with. Each one of us has a different Tigu. They're ancient weapons that were created by the first emperor of the 1,000-year empire years ago. Each Tigu grants the user different powers, and some of them even come with hidden abilities, or trump cards. This one is called One Cut Killer. Murasame. It's a cursed katana that exudes a lethal poison. There is no antidote for it. Akame explained as she displayed her katana for Naruto, who was amazed at the sword's ability. Well, my Tigu's called the King of Beasts transformation. Lionel. This little number allows me to transform into a literal beast, enhancing my 5 senses, along with my physical strength, speed, and regeneration. Leon boasted, and Tatsumi nodded before taking out his sword. Well, this is the key to my Tigu, and it's one that has a bit of sentimental value to me. It's called Demon Armor. Incursio. It's a full-body armor with an impenetrable defense that also greatly enhances my physical attributes, as well as a sort of sixth sense whenever danger's near. On top of that, the armor also has the ability to adapt and evolve as the result of battles against opponents I've faced, gaining new forms and abilities as time goes on, Tatsumi explained before Naruto found a razor-sharp wire at his throat. Uh-oh, looks like we've gone and revealed too much information about ourselves. So, unless you and your friends want to test out that earlier theory of mine and risk dying, it looks like we're on the same side now. Lubbock said as he held the wire in front of Naruto's neck, and Naruto lazily looked back at him. Is that supposed to scare me? Because if so, then it's not really working, Naruto nonchalantly said, and Lubbock looked at him for a moment before smiling and withdrawing his wires into his gloves. I think I'm beginning to like you, kid. You've actually got a set to stand up to a group of trained killers without worry of consequence. Lubbock said, and Naruto smirked. Comes with a job description as shinobi. Hasn't been the first time, and sure as hell won't be the last. That's a nice little trick you've got there, by the way. I'm guessing that's your Tigu. Naruto asked, and Lubbock nodded in affirmation. Sure is, this one's called Infinite Uses. Cross tail. You notice the wire threads coming out of the gloves? They're made from the body hair of a superclass dragon-like danger beast. They're razor sharp and tough as steel and can be used to attack, defend against, or immobilize opponents. Lubbock explained, causing Naruto to whistle in amazement. That's a handy little gadget, no pun intended. It's no wonder you and your friends are such skilled assassins. With these Tigu giving you all of these abilities, you're virtually unstoppable. Now on that note, General Nagenda, why don't you tell us why you brought us here? Naruto said, and Nagenda nodded before she began briefing him on the details of the mission. As your intel on us may have already told you, Night Raid is one of the covert divisions of the Revolutionary Army, determined to overthrow the corrupt empire and create a new empire free of corruption. Night Raid main function is to handle reconnaissance and assassinations within the capital of the empire. In addition, we are charged with recovering any Tigu discovered in order to boost the combat effectiveness of the Revolutionary Army. However, to oppose Night Raid, two groups were formed by the Empire in direct opposition to us. The Uyghurs, led by General Esdeith, and Wild Hunt, led by the corrupt Prime Minister's son Sierra. Both groups have caused many problems for Night Raid, and we've had many near-death experiences at the hands of both groups. The Revolutionary Army is ready to launch a full-scale assault on the capital soon, and I decided if we're going into a battle of this magnitude, we need all the help we can get. Najenda explained and Naruto nodded in agreement. You mentioned near-death experiences, what exactly happened? What exactly are we dealing with here? Naruto asked and the members of Night Raid looked at each other before nodding. One of the Uyghurs' members, a psychotic bitch named Seryu Ubiquitous that was once a member of the Imperial Police, attacked myself and Sheila a while back. All because she wanted to avenge the murder of her corrupt former captain, Ogre the Demon. Mine explained. I'm afraid that's mostly my fault. I was the one who killed Ogre in the first place, I should have been the one to deal with Seryu from the beginning. Tatsumi guiltily said before Shield placed a hand on her shoulder. You did your job, Tatsumi, no one blames you for what nearly happened to us. Besides, back then you were nowhere near the level you are now. Shield kindly said. She's right, you would have only been more of a problem than you would have been any kind of solution. If you had tried to fight Seryu back then, she would have killed you easily. Akame flatly said and Tatsumi gratefully smiled at his two female friends. Thanks, Akame, Sheila needed to hear that, Tatsumi said, and Mine nodded before continuing her story. We fought against Seryu and her Tigu, magical beast transformation. Hekatonker's and we both had the upper hand early on. But then Seryu activated Hekatonker's trump card called Berserker, which morphed it into its monster form, and she used it to try to crush me to death. Then Sheila had to break off her attack on Seryu, who she was moments away from killing to save me by cutting off the beast's arms with her own Tigu. Mine explained before Sheila showed Team 7 the giant scissors on her back. Hutter of Creations. Extus. It allows me to cut through even the toughest of objects with ease, even other Tigu. Sheila said and Mine nodded before carrying on with her story. After she saved me, however, I somehow managed to see Seryu about to shoot Sheila from a distance with a hidden gun she had stored in her mouth. Despite being in pain, I managed to get up and pull Sheila down out of the way with my already injured arm, and the bullet missed Sheila and hit me in the arm. Mine told them. And that's how you injured your arm. Sakura reasoned and Mine nodded before Sheila picked up the story where Mine left off. Once we were down, Hekatonkers tried to finish us both off. But with the last of her strength, Mine used her Tigu and blasted the beast away from us before collapsing unconscious from fatigue. Sheila said before Mine displayed her gun-type Tigu. Roman artillery. Pumpkin. It's a heavy artillery rifle that fires bursts of concentrated spirit energy. Its power and range increase depending on the level of danger I'm in. Mine shared. After Mine had collapsed and with the Imperial Police closing in, I knew it was time for us to get out of there, so I activated Extas's trump card, which released a blinding flash of light, and after grabbing Mine and Pumpkin, we made our escape, much to Seryu's rage. Sheila finished. Not long after that, I had a bit of a near-death experience of my own. Night Raid and the Uyghurs were locked into a fierce battle, but eventually, we got separated. Afterwards, I attempted to kill a couple of the Uyghurs on my own. Looking back on it, that was a mistake and it almost cost me my life. The first one I came across was the one named Kurum. Oh, by the way, she also happens to be the younger sister of Akame. Chelsea said and Naruto raised an eye at this and looked to Akame. It's a long story, I'll explain later. Akame quickly said and Chelsea continued her story. Well, I used my Tigu, Phantasmagoria. Dia Foundation to transform into another member of the Uyghurs, a guy named Bulls, and I prepared to try and kill Kurum. Problem is, before I could do it, we were interrupted by the real Bulls which forced me to have to retreat. I attempted to reach for my Tigu to transform and escape, but before I could, I got my hand shot off by one of Kurum's undead puppets from her Tigu, Chelsea explained. March of the Dead. Yatsufusa. It's a katana blade that allows the user to reanimate and control up to 8 corpses it has killed at a time. Akame chimed in making Naruto's eyes widen in amazement. Sounds almost exactly like the summoning. Impure world reincarnation technique. Naruto thought to himself. I continued to run away, but soon I was cornered by another of her undead puppets Natala. But just when I was about to be cut down, Tatsumi showed up and saved me, crushing Natala and flying off with me. Chelsea said before Tatsumi nodded affirmatively. Remember when I said my Tigu Incursio had the ability to evolve and adapt and I gained new powers and abilities as time went on? Well, by the time we'd gotten to the battle with the Uyghurs, I'd developed a sixth sense of sorts that I could sense whenever someone close to me was in danger. As I rushed to try and find Chelsea, I basically pleaded with Incursio to give me the strength to keep another of my comrades from dying, and Incursio began to evolve into the form you saw me fighting in, and this allowed me to get to Chelsea in time. But, forcing Incursio to evolve the way I did came with a price. This Tigu is made from the flesh of a super-class danger beast named Tyrant. Forcing it to evolve means that now the weapon has begun to fuse with me. After a few more uses, I'll be turned into the beast itself. Tatsumi sadly said before an idea clicked into Naruto's head. Tatsumi, toss me Incursio's key for a moment, Naruto said, and Tatsumi looked surprised at his request. Well, I'm not sure that would be a good idea, I'm really the only one that can use Incursio, Tatsumi said. Tatsumi, trust me on this, I think I may have a solution to your problem with Incursio, Naruto assured him, and the brunette male hesitated for a second and looked to mine, and she nodded in assurance before he unsheathed Incursio and tossed it to the blonde, who jabbed it into the ground. Naruto then stepped back and took out a scroll along with a brush and some ink. Night Raid watched with interest as the blonde sage began drawing intricate marks on the scroll. After he was done he began running through a fast pace of hand signs before stopping. Seal. He shouted before placing his hand on Incursio, and a blinding flash of light appeared causing Night Raid to cover their eyes. When they opened them, they saw the blonde standing with a smile on his face and Incursio with a mark similar to the ones he'd drawn on the scroll. There, that should do it, Naruto said before Tatsumi stepped forward and carefully picked up Incursio and looked at the strange markings on it. What did you do to Incursio? Tatsumi curiously asked and the blonde grinned. It's one of my clan's signature techniques, Genjutsu, or the art of sealing. It allows me to seal anything like other objects, living beings, chakra, you name it into another object. I use my knowledge of sealing to place a yin-yang release seal on Incursio that leaves it in a permanent state of balance, meaning while you can still use it, Incursio can no longer be forcibly evolved, so now you no longer have to worry about Tyrant taking control of you. Naruto proudly explained, and Tatsumi was stunned as was the rest of Night Raid. Naruto, is there anything you ninjas can't do? It's almost unfair how you guys can do so much more than we can. Mine pouted and Naruto chuckled at the pinket. Believe me, you'd be surprised mine. By the way, Tatsumi, I can take care of your eye problem if you'd like. Naruto said as he motioned to Tatsumi's reddened eye and Tatsumi smiled at the observant blonde. So, you noticed that huh? Sure, if you can help out why not? Tatsumi said and Naruto activated his Rinnegan before placing a hand on Tatsumi's head. After a few moments, Tatsumi's red eye began to flash before it slowly began to morph back into its normal green color. Thanks, so dare I ask how'd you pull that one off? Tatsumi quipped and Naruto grinned before explaining. Remember how I said my Rinnegan has a number of different techniques it grants me, well one of them is my pre-top path, which gives me the ability to absorb any form of chakra through physical contact. I used it to draw out all of Tyrant's negative energy from your body and destroy it, Naruto explained, and Tatsumi just shook his head at how just when it seemed like the three ninjas couldn't get any stronger, they continued to be full of surprises. Well Chelsea and mine and Shield have already told you their stories, so now I guess I'll tell you mine. After a battle with Wild Hunt, Lubbock and I did some scouting in the imperial capital when we were caught in a trap by Sayara's Tigu. Tatsumi began before Lubbock chimed in while showing them an odd-looking pendant. Dimensional formation. Shambhala. It's a teleportation Tigu that allows the user to teleport people and objects over large distances using markers placed at the target of the teleportation. Lubbock stated. That sounds almost eerily similar to the effects of Kakashi-sensei's Kamui. Team 7 thought to themselves. So, how'd you get a hold of it? Naruto asked and Lubbock smirked. Well that's the fun part, Sayara teleported us into the Imperial Palace. What he didn't expect was for Tatsumi to be as strong as he was. Needless to say, the two of us together were able to wipe the floor with Wild Hunt. Although we didn't really kill them, we were only fighting to escape. Lubbock gloated before Tatsumi continued. After taking care of Wild Hunt, we took Sayara's Tigu from him and thought it would be a good time to escape. Unfortunately, that's when General Esdeath and General Budo showed up. Now I knew we may have been able to handle one of them by ourselves, but two of the Empire's strongest generals, even I knew we didn't stand a chance in that situation. So, I basically told Lubbock to take the Tigu and get the hell out of there. Tatsumi said. Naturally I objected to leaving a comrade behind, but what happened next didn't really leave me with any other choice. The Yugurs all showed up and they and General Esdeath and General Budo tried to attack us, but Tatsumi took the bullet in his evolved Incursio armor and it allowed me to teleport out of the palace to safety. Lubbock said. How I managed to survive the attacks I'll never know, but even then, I was still screwed. I was sentenced to be executed and General Esdeath was handling the execution personally. Thankfully, my team showed up just in time to save me, and after an intense showdown that left General Budo greatly crippled after mine almost blew a hole in his chest, we were able to get away, Tatsumi said, and Naruto turned to mine. How'd you do that? I'm guessing it had something to do with your Tigu. Naruto assumed and mine nodded. It's Pumpkin's trump card, it allows me to create a blasting beam so overwhelming that it acts like a giant blade, cutting anything in its path. This power is unleashed according to how passionate my emotions are, but it also overheats Pumpkin, rendering it unusable for a while. Mine explained and Naruto raised an eye in amazement. Now how the hell did that General Budo guy survive that? Naruto asked in slight disbelief. Well, that's mostly thanks to his own Tigu, Thunder God's Rage. A Dramelich. It's a pair of gauntlets that allow him to use lightning as a weapon in both offense and defense. He used a Dramelich to form a defensive force field to cushion the blast. While it didn't protect him completely, it negated about half of the blast's lethal damage, destroying his armor and compromising his ribs and lungs, or so we've heard. Mine said and Naruto nodded in understanding. Sounds like these guys you're up against are monsters. And if you're going to try to take the fight to them, you're going to need more than just the three of us to do it. So, I think I'll bring a few friends along, Naruto said before grabbing one of his Hiraishin kunai and vanishing in a flash. Several minutes later, he was back, but he wasn't alone. Night Raid, I'm sure you've heard stories about my status as the Jinchuriki of Kurama, correct? Well, allow me to introduce to you the rest of my Jinchuriki friends. Gaara, Yujito Nai, Yagura Karatachi, Rashi, Han, Utakata, Fu, and Killer Bee. Also, I'd like to take a moment to introduce three of my good friends from Konoha, Kiba Inuzuka, and his partner Akamaru, Choji Akamichi, and Shikamaru Nara, Naruto said, introducing Night Raid to his ninja companions, who looked a bit intimidated at the powerful-looking group of shinobi. If these guys are anywhere near as strong as Naruto and his team, then we better not mess with them. Night Raid wisely thought to themselves. So, Naruto, these the rebels who sent for you guys? Kiba asked his buddy since childhood. Yeah, they're the ones. They're a gang of assassins named Night Raid. They're part of a rebel group called the Revolutionary Army looking to overthrow the corrupt empire. Long story short, they're about to launch a full-on assault on the capital, and they need all the backup they can get, since there are two groups within the empire called the Yeagers and Wild Hunt that are just as powerful as them standing in their way. Naruto summed up and Shikamaru shook his head. Man, what a drag. We just get out of one war and now it looks like we're about to be pulled into another one. Shikamaru said. Yeah, but we can't just leave these guys to do this alone. We've at least gotta try to help them out. Choji said. Heh, that's fine by me, things were getting too quiet back home anyway. It was a bit boring really. Kiba said with a smirk. I'll second that notion, I needed some fun to make things interesting. The always energetic Fu said. You call aiding a rebellion and overthrowing a corrupt government fun? The diplomatic Yagura said. Why not? Sounds easy enough and it's nothing worse than what we've already been through. Rashi replied. He does make a fair point, Yagura. Yujito chuckled. No doubt in that, cat, this'll be easy as pulling rabbits out the hat. Killer Bee rhymed. So, on that note, what's the plan, Naruto? Gaara asked his Jinchuriki brother. Okay, so from what we've learned, each of the Yeagers and the members of Wild Hunt have powerful items called Tigu. They allow them to do things that we as ninjas can do naturally. If we take out each of them, we should be able to kill the Emperor, who is the head of the empire, easily, Naruto said. That's a well thought out plan, Naruto, except there's just one thing. Remember what we said about the Prime Minister earlier, his name is Honest, and he's the real mastermind behind the empire, not the Emperor who's merely nothing more than a figurehead. Akame explained. So, if we take out this Prime Minister, the empire will fall, sounds easy enough. The soft-spoken Utakata said, and the equally reserved Han nodded in agreement. In that case, we should focus on eliminating the Yeagers and Wild Hunt first, and then set our sights on the real target, Han said. There's also the issue of taking out the two generals. General Esdeath and General Budo along with the Prime Minister's bodyguard Suzuka, Akame said. Suzuka was the lone survivor of a group of Honest's personal executioners that we eliminated. The 4 Rakshasa demons. She's so powerful that she's one of the only known people that can face off against a Tigu user without using one herself. Najenda explained and Naruto nodded. By the way, you never mentioned just how many of these guys are with Wild Hunt and the Yeagers or what kind of Tigu they use. Naruto pointed out and Najenda nodded. The Yeagers consist of 6 members. The leader, as I've said, is General Esdeath, who wields the elemental Tigu, demon god manifestation. Demon's extract. It's the blood of a powerful danger beast that Esdeath drank that gives her manipulation over ice. Najenda said, making Team 7 and the rest of the shinobi raise an eye in surprise. If that doesn't sound exactly like the ice release techniques the Yuki clan was known for. They all thought to themselves. The other members are Seryu Ubiquitous, who as we told you wields the biological Tegu, magical beast transformation. Hekatonkers. A dog-type Tegu that can grow to immense sizes and devour people. She also is equipped with 10 special body modifications called Judgment of the 10 Heavenly Kings, they're 10 incredibly powerful weapons, created by the deceased Jaeger, Dr. Stylish, that are as powerful as Tegu, that she can interchange during battle. Najenda said, interesting Kiba. So, hold on a minute, there are different types of these Tegu things. Kiba asked and Najenda nodded. There are many different types of Tegu. Some are weapon-based Tegu like Akame's Murasum or Mine's Pumpkin, then there are elemental-based Tegu like Esdeith's Demon Extractor General Budo's Adramelage that can control lighting. Then you have biological Tegu like Seryu's Hekatonkers or our very own Susanoo. Biological Tegu are incredibly unique as they can regenerate themselves where other Tegu can't and can only be destroyed when their core is broken. Najenda said and Naruto looked at the blue-haired man. Hang on a minute, you're a Tegu? Naruto said and Susanoo smiled and nodded in affirmative. I would have thought you'd have figured that out by now. The speed of lightning. Susanoo at your service. I'm also Najenda's Tegu partner. Susanoo introduced himself with a salute. Anyway, besides the two Yugurs I've mentioned, the others are Akame's sister Kurum, who wields the katana Tegu, March of the Dead. Yatsufusa which, as Akame stated, allows the user to control the corpses of up to 8 people she's killed, Najenda said, making the reincarnated Jinchuriki wince at hearing that while having flashbacks to their time under Obito's control. As for the rest, there's Wave who wields the armor Tegu, Carnage Incarnate. Grand Chariot, which is basically an advanced version of Tatsumi's Incursio. Then there's Bowls who wields the flamethrower Tegu, Purgatory's Invitation. Rubicante that produces flames that cannot be extinguished until the target is dead. Finally, there's Run, who wields the wing-type Tegu, 1000-mile flight. Mystima. As the name suggests it allows its user to gain wings which give them the ability to fly for a limited amount of time. It also enables the user to shoot feathers or launch one of the wings towards enemies, both easily capable of piercing through flesh. But it's weak at close-range combat. What about Wild Hunt, how many of them are we dealing with, Naruto asked. Well, Wild Hunt also consists of 6 members, Sayara, the leader, and son of Prime Minister Honest. He once wielded the Tegu dimensional formation. Shambhala until it was taken from him by Lubbock. The next member is Champ, who's known for his morally questionable actions against children. He uses the Tegu A solution. Leaguer. This is a 6-orb type Tegu. Each orb is imbued with an element that activates once thrown, Najenda said, and the group of shinobi, particularly Sakura, Yujito, and Fu, felt their blood boil at hearing Najenda's description of Champ's despicable actions towards children. The next member is Enshin, a former pirate from the eastern seas. His Tegu is called Moonlight Sword Dance. Shamshir, which is capable of creating aerial blades. The Tegu is affected by the lunar cycle and is at its strongest during the full moon. The next member is an alchemist named Dorothea. She wields a fang-type Tegu called Blood Collection. A Zordex that she uses to bite enemies in order to kill them, while also sucking out their blood. After absorbing blood from an enemy, Dorothea's strength and regenerative abilities become enhanced. Then there's Kasmina, a singer from the western country that was branded as a witch because of her voice that could manipulate people. She uses the microphone Tegu Great Tremor. Heavy pressure. It can amplify the user's voice and turn it into ultrasonic waves, capable of pulverizing the enemy by shattering their bones. The final member of Wild Hunt is Aizu, a master swordsman. Oddly enough, he's the only member of Wild Hunt who doesn't use a Tegu, but his swordsmanship is good enough where he seemingly doesn't need one. Najenda said and a plan formed in Naruto's head. Alright, I'm thinking each of the Jinchuriki will form teams of 2 with the members of Night Raid to counter the Jaegers, along with the 2 generals. The rest of Team 7 along with Kiba, Choji, and Shikamaru can deal with Wild Hunt. I'll team with Akame and we'll go after Kurum. Yujito, I want you to go with Shield, and you 2 will deal with Seryu. Utakata, you and Lubbock will take care of Run. Naruto plotted. If you don't mind Naruto, let me have Bulls. I've got a personal score to settle with him, Chelsea said with a serious look in her eyes, and the blonde sage looked at her and nodded. Alright, but I'm sending Fu along with you for backup. Mine, I want you and Yugura to cover Wave. As for Leon, Tatsumi, B, and Gaara, I want the 4 of you to deal with General Budo and General Esdeith. Han and Rashi, you're with General Najenda and Susanoo. I want the 4 of you to sweep the Imperial Palace and take out any guards of bodyguards you see. This should give the rest of the Revolutionary Army an uncontested path to infiltrate the palace. As far as Wild Hunt is concerned, I want Kiba to carve up Champ. Choji, I want you to obliterate Enshin. Shikamaru, you're the best option to take care of Aizu. Sakura can handle Kasmina and Dorothea on her own. And Sasuke can finish off Sayara. Naruto finished and everyone nodded at the well-thought-out plan. What about the Prime Minister's bodyguard Suzuka, what should we do about her Naruto? Sakura asked her teammate who shook his head. My guess is that amidst the chaos of the ensuing battle, in fear of his own life, the Prime Minister will probably want to keep Suzuka close by himself and the Emperor as both a human shield and the last line of defense should anyone get past the Jaegers, Wild Hunt and the Imperial forces. In that case, it's probably a safe bet that we won't actually see Suzuka out during the battle, which means we won't have to deal with her until it comes time to take out the Prime Minister. At which time it'll just be a matter of eliminating her, which would leave him completely defenseless. Naruto theorized, and everyone nodded in agreement at the valid points the blonde sage made. Very well, the rest of the Revolutionary Army will be here to meet us tomorrow. For now, we should spend this time to prepare and strategize our attack, Najenda suggested, and everyone nodded before each of the shinobi went off with their respective teams to prepare for the invasion. Later that IGHT. Itsumi looked out over a clearing that was situated on a large lake. The brunette male had a lot on his mind as he thought about the impending battle against the Empire. His thoughts drifted to his late mentor Bullet and wondered what he would think of how far he'd come since losing him. Bro, I wish you were still here. What would you think of me now? Tatsumi thought to himself with a smile on his face before taking out Incursio's key and looking at the seals Naruto had placed on it again. The blonde shinobi had said that Incursio was in a permanent state of balance and could be used without further worry of evolving and having Tyrant take over his mind. Well, Tatsumi decided it was time to test that theory as he took a deep breath and jabbed Incursio's key into the ground. Incursio? Tatsumi screamed and a flash of red light later he was standing in Incursio's armor. He looked down at his reflection in the waters of the lake and noticed Incursio had changed. Incursio now looked similar to its original form, only the gauntlets and feet of the armor were clawed similar to Incursio's second evolved form. The helmet of Incursio looked incredibly similar to Tyrant as well, and the wings from his second evolved form remained the same also. It's as if my armor's different forms have merged, pretty cool, Tatsumi said as he deactivated Incursio before hearing footsteps behind him and he turned to see Sasuke standing behind him. Hey Sasuke, come to enjoy the sights? Tatsumi asked the raven-haired shinobi. You could say that. I actually came to ask you about that armor of yours, Sasuke said and Tatsumi looked at him in surprise. Incursio, yeah what about it? Tatsumi asked and the last Uchiha simply stared at him before he spoke. It's a very interesting Tigu you have. The aesthetics behind it are somewhat similar to the effects of my Sharingan Susanoo. Its ability to adapt and evolve over time, as well as its impregnable defense, has me intrigued. What I wanted to know is how did you come to possess such a powerful weapon? Sasuke asked and Tatsumi smiled before looking at the sky in remembrance. Back when I first joined Night Raid, I was already a capable fighter, but I was nowhere near the same level as the rest of my comrades in Night Raid. I was this country boy from a small poor village who was far too naive to survive as an assassin. Eventually, one of the members of Night Raid, 100 Killer Bullet, took me under his wing as his protege. His training was tough, but I showed early signs of promise. So much so, that bro hinted many times that he wouldn't be surprised if I was able to surpass him one day. He was right about that by the way. But, the life of an assassin is dangerous, and despite showing all the promise in the world, I was still so far behind everyone else. On one particular mission together, he and I were assigned the task of protecting one of the Prime Minister's political enemies aboard a cruise ship from a group called the Three Beasts. During that battle, I tried to hold off one of the Three Beasts, while bro dealt with a man who turned out to be his former master from his past. Unfortunately, I wasn't strong enough to hold off the beast, which stopped bro from landing the killing blow on his former master to save me. That proved to be a fatal mistake for bro. While he ended up killing his former master, he ended up fatally poisoned in the process. With his dying moments, he passed on Incursio's key to me, allowing me to defeat the remaining beast. But the damage had been done, my mentor Bullet was dead. Tatsumi choked out with tears in his eyes, but he quickly managed to compose himself. Ever since that day, I've guarded Incursio's key with my life. Taking all of the lessons, bro taught me in order to grow stronger and using them to live up to his vision of one day surpassing him. Tatsumi said and Sasuke looked at him before nodding and he began to walk away before stopping. You know, you and my teammate Naruto have a lot in common. You both were relative nobodies when you started out. And both of you have been through intense adversity in your lives, but you've both overcome that adversity to achieve greatness in your own way. Sasuke stated before walking off. Itsumi was shocked to hear about how similar he was to a man he considered more powerful than all of Night Raid combined. Motivated by this realization, Tatsumi made his way back to Night Raid's hideout with a renewed fire in his eyes. BLSCWHERE. Akame sat on the front steps of Night Raid's hideout as she thought about the upcoming raid on the capital. She knew this was the best chance the Revolutionary Army had of freeing the continent from the corruption of the Empire, and with their shinobi allies by their side, they could finally achieve peace. Thinking about our battle tomorrow came. She heard someone say and turned her head to see Naruto standing behind her. Yeah, you could say I'm a bit restless, Akame confessed, and Naruto walked over and sat down next to her. I've been meaning to ask you something. Earlier you mentioned your sister Kurum was a member of the Jaegers. If that's the case, how is she with the Empire and you're with the Revolutionary Army? Naruto asked and Akame's red eyes looked at him before sighing. Before I joined Night Raid, I was an assassin for the Empire. My sister Kurum and I were sold to the Empire at a young age and underwent a harsh training regimen to become stronger. I was able to withstand it, Kurum wasn't so lucky. The two of us were separated soon afterward and I was placed on a 7-man assassination team for the Empire. Kurum, on the other hand, was placed in another division and was subjected to cruel treatment as well as being forced to take body-enhancing drugs to make her stronger. Akame explained and Naruto burned with rage at the idea of two sisters being treated like animals. Soon afterward, I began to see the corruption of the Empire and when I was sent to kill the boss, she invited me to join Night Raid and I accepted. Unfortunately, Kurum doesn't have that luxury due to her constant reliance on those drugs. Even then, Kurum hates me for defecting. She sees me as a traitor and wants to kill me and add me to her Tigu's collection of undead puppets so, in her unstable mind, we can be together forever. I honestly don't know what to do anymore. I truly want to save my sister, but I'm afraid she may be too far gone at this point. I worry that the only way I could save Kurum at this point is to kill her, and it breaks my heart to think like that, but I just don't know what else to do, Akame said, and she began to break down and cry before, to her surprise she was embraced by Naruto. Akame, I can only imagine what you're going through. I've honestly never had any real family or brothers and sisters of my own, so I don't know what it's like to deal with being at odds with a sibling. But I will say this, I know what it likes to care deeply about those precious to you. Even when those same precious people are the main source of our pain. That's why I swear, I'll do everything in my power to help you save Kurum. Naruto vowed, and Akame looked at the blonde sage with eyes filled with tears. But why would you help me when we barely know each other, Akame asked, and Naruto smiled at her. That's easy because you're my friend. And I always go above and beyond to help out my friends. That's who I am. Naruto said with a grin and Akame smiled and hugged Naruto, and the two embraced for a moment before separating and Akame wiped her remaining tears. Thank you Naruto. I think I'll go to bed now, I need to be in top form for tomorrow's raid. Akame said before going inside Night Raid's hideout and Naruto smiled at the red-eyed assassin before standing up. Hey Leon, you can come out now, Naruto called and said blonde woman stepped out from behind a nearby corner with a stunned look on her face. How'd you know I was there? Leon said, surprised he'd sensed her so easily. I'm a sensor ninja Leon, it's part of my job to sense when people are eavesdropping on conversations. Naruto flatly said and Leon just shook her head. There really isn't anything you ninjas can't do is there. But in all seriousness, thank you. I overheard the whole thing between you and Akame and I appreciate you consoling her and offering to help her. Leon said as she smiled at her fellow blonde. Hey, what kind of a man would I be if I didn't help a friend in need, Naruto said with his trademark smile, and Leon smiled at the blonde's kindness and shook her head in amusement. You and Tatsumi are so much alike it's incredible. Anyway, we'd better get some rest, we've got a big day tomorrow. Leon said and Naruto nodded in agreement before both blondes turned in for the night. Anasekai, Shiritaku Nakata by Mikusawai begins playing. That'll do it for chapter 1 of this epic crossover. Boy, this was a long chapter, but I was glad how this one turned out and I hope you guys agree as well. There's actually a reason I chose to release the first chapter today, because today marks the date of the very last release of the Akame ga Kill manga. So, what better way to commemorate the ending of a great series by releasing a crossover for the series on the same day. I figured that with the way Night Raid was with outsiders, they'd probably be hesitant to trust Team 7 unless they proved themselves to them first. I figured the best way to accomplish this is to have Naruto, Sakura and Sasuke take on, in my opinion, Night Raid's 3 strongest members in Akame, Leon and Tatsumi and come out on top in convincing fashion. I hope everyone enjoyed the battle scenes between Sakura and Leon, Sasuke and Tatsumi, and, my personal favorite of the 3 to write, Naruto and Akame. Well, the outcome of the battle should have never been in doubt, basically anyone who bet on Night Raid beating Team 7 or even hanging in a competitive battle with them deserved to lose their money. It was still a nice change of pace to see Night Raid in the role of being the ones getting their asses handed to them. Especially Akame who, to my knowledge, is the only member of Night Raid to have never lost a single battle throughout the entire series. If you can find a battle in which Akame has lost, go nuts, but I sure as hell couldn't. ETW, for anyone who may have missed it, I threw in a few tributes to the Star Wars franchise during Naruto and Akame's fight as a nod to the release of the recent Star Wars film. Naruto's sword being infused with sage chakra to glow orange with cross-like chakra extensions at the hilt was a nod to Star Wars villain Kylo Ren. Also, Naruto using Shinra Tensei to send Akame flying back was a nod to the Force Push ability, or to narrow it down, Darth Maul's use of the Force Push during his duel with Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now, concerning the near-death experiences of Night Raid, that was something I intended to do since before the beginning of this series, especially with most fans being so unhappy about so many fan favorites dying, myself included. And in case you're wondering, yes, this will be a common theme in my stories. The decision to bring Shield back was an easy one as I got seriously pissed when that bitch Seryu killed her. Believe me, she's definitely gonna pay for that in the worst way in the next chapter. But, as mad as I was at Seryu, I gotta say a part of me was equally as ticked off at Mine. Now don't get me wrong, I love Mine to death. But is anyone other than me just a little bit bothered at how Mine, who let me remind everyone is supposed to be a genius sniper, seemed blissfully unaware of her surroundings after being saved by Shield from Koro, knowing there was a dangerous psychopathic killer about 10 feet away from you. Like seriously, how does someone who's supposed to be a trained killed make an amateurish mistake like that? I make the argument, and I stand by the argument that had Mine been paying attention like any trained assassin would have in that situation, that Mine could have probably saved Shield from being shot by Seryu, which would have prevented her from being eaten and killed by Koro. As for reckoning Chelsea's death, that was an easy one to figure out. It was just a matter of having Chelsea go after Kurum first instead of Bowles after the fight with the Yugurs, and then fast-forwarding the evolution of Incursio to allow Tatsumi to get to her in time before she gets killed. In reality, reckoning Chelsea's death this way allows me to do two things. First of all, it allows me to keep Bowles alive for a future confrontation with Chelsea in the next chapter, in which I have something special planned. Won't say what it is, but I will say the plans I have for the two will be huge. Secondly, by keeping Bowles alive, it prevents a series of tragic events that happened in the canon storyline from happening. Think about it, had Bowles not died, his wife and daughter would have never had a grave to visit, meaning they would have never been brutally raped and killed by Wild Hunt. Had that not happened, Run probably wouldn't have gotten so triggered by their deaths that he wouldn't have gone after Champ alone like he did, which ultimately led to Champ coming back and seeking vengeance, causing Run to end up fatally wounded and turned into one of Kurum's puppets. So, by killing off Bowles, Chelsea inadvertently caused the deaths of not one, not two, but 3 people. Thanks Chelsea. As far as reckoning Lubbock's death, that one's pretty simple. Since Tatsumi's upgrade was sped up, just have him and Lubbock waste Wild Hunt and steal Sire as Tigu before having Lubbock escape with a Tigu, as Tatsumi sacrifices himself to allow his friend to get away. As for reckoning Mine being in a coma after the battle with General Budo and reckoning General Budo's death, I need the general alive for the next part of my story to make the battle more interesting. And in lieu of Mine being in a coma, I decided to go a different, more creative route where the constant mental fatigue from using pumpkin caused her to develop migraines. This is actually a nod to my mother who suffers from actual migraines, so I know quite a bit about the subject. Oh, by the way, anyone wondering how Susanoo is still alive, it's really simple. In my stories, Esdeath learning her time freezing trump card prior to the final battle against the Revolutionary Army will be reckoned to her learning the ability after said time. Now sadly, the only character from Night Raid I won't be bringing back in this series is Bullet. I know there are some people out there that really like Bullet, myself included, but the reason I've decided to leave him dead is that, as much as I hate to admit it, his death is the only death in the series that remotely made sense. Because let's be honest, when Tatsumi first joined Night Raid, he was the weakest member of the team bar none. And even though he was a skilled fighter, he was still a liability against stronger opponents. We first saw that in the battle against Zanku the Beheader. Had Akame not shown up when she did, Tatsumi would have been killed. So, there were only 2 ways the writers of the series could make him stronger. They could either create a Tigu for him specifically, or they could kill off one of the main characters and transfer their Tigu to Tatsumi. They chose the latter. And, to be fair, while killing off a cool character like Bullet may have been a bit of a move, it actually worked out brilliantly. As not only did Tatsumi grow stronger to be on the same level as his comrades, but transferring Incursio to Tatsumi proved to be one of, if not the key factor in putting the Empire down for the count. By the way, for anyone wondering about Incursio's new form after being sealed by Naruto, it's pretty much Incursio's original version with the gauntlets, feet, helmet, and wings of Incursio's second evolution. But the armor being in a permanent state of balance, I felt the best way to symbolize the change was to combine the original and completed stages of the armor. I actually got the idea of putting Incursio in a state of balance from looking at the aesthetics of Wave's Tigu Grand Chariot, which, I might remind you, is an advanced version of Incursio. I apologize if the interaction between Akame and Naruto at the end of the story was short, but it served its purpose to plant the seed for Akame and Naruto's eventual pairing and to allow Naruto to endear himself to not only Akame but to her Night Raid teammates as well. Also, notice how near the end of the chapter Sasuke remarked how similar Tatsumi was to Naruto, and Leone herself even lampshades this very sentiment. This serves as a bit of foreshadowing for a major upcoming scene involving the two in the next chapter. Again, won't say what it is, but I will say this, you guys are in for an absolute treat because it's going to be epic. On a final note, I hope everyone enjoyed my choice of songs for this chapter. In this chapter, I decided to focus on songs from the anime. But don't worry music lovers, I have an all-star lineup of hard rock and heavy metal songs picked out for chapter 2 when we get into the good stuff, the battle between the Revolutionary Alliance, as I'm calling them, and the Empire. Inside the Imperial Palace, a meeting was taking place between Emperor Makoto and Prime Minister Honest, along with Esdeath and the Jaegers, minus Area Ubiquitous, and Sire and Wild Hunt. Tensions were at boiling point after Lubbock's escape from the palace, with Sire as Tigu, and the failed execution of Tatsumi, the latter of which especially had Sire seething with rage, with Tatsumi being the cause of the former. Damn that boy, the next time I see him I swear he's as good as dead. I'll personally see to that. Sire fumed as his Wild Hunt subordinates, who were equally as pissed at Tatsumi and Lubbock for basically cleaning their clocks, shared his sentiments. I don't think you're in any position to make idle threats, Sire, particularly in your currently powerless state. Esdeath bluntly said while the Jaegers, who were not at all fond of Sire and his band of bastards, just sat back and enjoyed Sire's tantrum over being owned by two members of Night Raid. What was that? You'd better watch what you say to me, Esdeath. It's your fault the boy is still alive in the first place. If you would have had the guts to actually kill the bastard instead of trying to keep him as your pet, then he wouldn't be such a nuisance now. And while we're on the subject, just where the hell were you and the rest of the Jaegers when that boy and his little lapdog of a partner snuck into this palace, cheap-shotted me and the rest of Wild Hunt, and then ran off with my Tigu? Where the hell were you on that one? Sire demanded. If I recall correctly, Sire, you're the one that teleported them into the palace. Of course, what you didn't count on was the fact that Tatsumi was a stronger man than you and the rest of your little misfits combined. You have no one to blame for your plan coming back to bite you in the ass, but yourself, and now look at what you've been reduced to, a sniveling weakling cowering behind the backs of his band of lackeys. Esdeath scathingly said, and the Jaegers, particularly Kurum and Wave, smirked at seeing Sire put in his place by their leader. Why you, bitch? Sire raged as he lost control of his temper and was about to charge at Esdeath, who drew her rapier, while the Jaegers and Wild Hunt were about ready to defend their respective leaders. Enough, both of you. A voice authoritatively shouted, and all parties looked up to see General Budo standing in the room with a Dramelich aimed threateningly at both Esdeath and Sire. There will be no violence in this palace, particularly when the Emperor is present. You two want to fight someone, save your anger and your aggression for the revolutionaries. Because if I ever catch either of you attempting to fight inside of palace grounds again, I'll kill both of you, understood? General Budo demanded, his voice hoarse from his compromised ribs, but still intimidating enough to get his point across. Both Esdeath and Sire glared at each other before they both backed down, along with the rest of the Jaegers and Wild Hunt. General Budo nodded before lowering his weapon and joining the rest of the Empire's enforcers in the meeting. Now that you mention the revolutionaries, General Budo, outside of the two incidents here in the palace, they've been awfully quiet as of late. Even the normally active Night Raid hasn't been spotted causing trouble recently. Emperor Makoto pointed out. I agree. Their recent actions, or lack thereof, is highly suspicious. They're up to something, and it can't be anything good. General Budo said with his arms folded in thought. Now General, I'm sure Night Raid is probably still recovering from their near brush with death after escaping the palace. Besides, the Revolutionary Army's forces don't hold a candle to the Empire's finest. What's the worst they can do? Honest said while eating a piece of chicken. You underestimate them. Your arrogance and your ignorance is your weakness. General Budo said as he looked at the corrupt Prime Minister with disdain, who dismissed the general's offhanded insults about him. As is your stubbornness, old fool. Sure, we may have suffered a few setbacks as of recent, but it's nothing to be extremely bothered about. The fact remains that Night Raid and the Revolutionary Army are virtually powerless before the might of the Empire's finest. There's virtually no way they could really threaten us. Honest arrogantly said, reaching for another piece of meat. No sooner had he said that did a huge explosion sound through the walls of the palace, and everyone in the Emperor's meeting room was knocked out of their chairs by what felt like a massive earthquake, with Honest nearly knocking himself out as he fell out of his chair. What the hell was that? Esdeath irritably said as she rose to her feet. It felt like a damn bomb going off inside of the palace, Sire said, equally as miffed as Esdeath. Commander. We've got a major problem on our hands. Seryu screamed as she came running into the room with a look of absolute panic on her face. "Seryu, report. What the hell is going on?" Esdeath commanded her subordinate. "Commander, the Revolutionary Army has launched a full-on attack on the capital. And even worse, they're being led by Night Raid, along with what appears to be several hostile unidentified Tigu users. They're taking out all our soldiers and bodyguards left and right, and they're advancing towards the Imperial Palace fast," Seryu said in a frenzied panic. "What did you just say?" Esdeath shouted in outrage. "How dare those bastards?" Syra shouted, just as pissed as Esdeath. "Well, what the hell are all of you still standing here for? Yigers, get out there and kill every one of them," Esdeath ordered. "Wild Hunt, that goes for you too. Don't leave a single one of those bastards alive," Syra commanded, and with that, the Yigers and Wild Hunt took off and scattered throughout the palace with Syra, Esdeath, and Buto right behind them with fury in their eyes, leaving Emperor Makoto and Prime Minister Honest alone. "I think you may have spoken a little too soon, Minister," Emperor Makoto said to Prime Minister Honest, referring to the minister's earlier comment of Night Raid not being able to threaten them. "We should get you to the throne room, Your Majesty. I think you and I will be safe there with my hired bodyguard Suzuka," Honest said, and the young emperor nodded in agreement before the two of them made their way to the throne room. MEANWHILE. The Yigers had each split up throughout the capital to seek out the members of Night Raid separately. Kurum had taken off by herself to look for her sister Akame. Seryu went to look for Shield and Mine to even the score with them. Meanwhile, Bulls, Wave, and Run had each taken off in separate directions to track down Night Raid. Meanwhile, Wild Hunt had stuck together, hoping to catch Night Raid off guard and use the numbers game to gang up on them and take them out. They were especially hoping to run into Tatsumi or Lubbock again, so they could take their time in making their deaths as painful as possible. Sleep Now and the Fire by Rage Against the Machine begins playing. "Where the fuck are those bastards?" Enshin said with Shamshir in hand, ready to go at a moment's notice as Wild Hunt searched the grounds near their headquarters for the revolutionaries. "They're here somewhere, keep looking. We'll find them and kill them one by one," Dorothea said. "Not unless we find you first," they heard someone say before they saw a kunai thrown in their path with a tag on it. The tag then lit up like a fuse and all of Wild Hunt looked at the knife in horror. "It's a damn bomb, scatter," Enshin said as Wild Hunt scattered just before the paper bomb went off, creating a huge explosion. "That was too close," Dorothea said before she ate a devastating punch to the face, courtesy of Sakura. "Surprise," Sakura said as the punch sent Dorothea flying back into the headquarters. "What the who the fuck is this bitch?" Enshin said. "I'd be less worried about her and more worried about me if I was you," he heard someone say before Enshin was knocked stupid by Choji's expanded fist. "Enshin, are you okay?" Kasmina said before she was sent flying into the headquarters just like Dorothea, courtesy of a Sakura kick. "Who the fuck are these filthy animals?" Champ said as he prepared Die Liger for an attack. "We're your executioners," Champ heard someone say before two rotating cyclones came charging into Champ, tearing him limb from limb. "So, this is the power of the revolutionaries," the stoic Aizu said as he calmly watched the massacre play out in front of him. "No, this is the power of shinobi," he heard someone say before quickly moving to avoid what he noticed to be a shadow moving towards him. "So, you read my attack. Smart move," Shikamaru commended. "It was quite an effort on your part to try and catch me off guard, Shinobi. I can already tell you will make a fine prey for Kisetsu's next meal," the bloodthirsty Aizu said before drawing his blade and moving to engage Shikamaru. Meanwhile, Champ, Dorothea, Enshin, and Kasmina slowly made their way to their feet, glaring hatefully at the three shinobi standing in their way. Sakura activated her strength of 100 seal, while Choji had his multi-size technique activated and was towering over all of his friends. Meanwhile, Kiba and Akamaru were all ready to go at a moment's notice as well. "So, who wants to get their ass kicked first?" Kiba confidently said. "Rebel bastards, we'll show you what happens when you cross us," Enshin said as he used Shamshir to send several aerial blades at the three shinobi, who quickly dodged before going on the attack. Enshin then had all the wind knocked out of his body by a massive fist courtesy of Choji, which knocked him into the air, before Choji grabbed him in midair with his other hand and threw him headfirst into the ground. "So, you pieces of trash wanna play her off, huh? Alright, try this on for size," Champ said, adjusting his cap before throwing Die Liger's explosion orb and storm orb at the shinobi. Kiba and Akamaru tore through the large whirlwind and massive explosion, using Fang passing Fang before slicing apart Champ, dealing heavy damage to the serial child rapist. Champ made it back to his feet, only to be sucker punched in the face by a shadow clone of Kiba. The punch sent Champ flying back and the Kiba clone got on all fours before the real Kiba leaped off the clone's back and delivered a mid-air Superman punch to Champ that sent him crashing into the ground. Tam got up once again, albeit slower this time, and now highly pissed off, and decided he'd had enough of these filthy animals. He decided to throw both the flame and rod orb of Diliger to completely destroy his opponents. Hiba and Akamaru, knowing by instinct the orbs can't be anything good, swiftly dodged the attacks with their inhuman speed before they both transformed using their human-beast combination transformation. Double-headed wolf fusing into a two-headed wolf. Fang Wolf Fang. Kiba and Akamaru said before rotating at violent speeds and rocketing at Champ. Champ tried to use his Tigu to protect him by spinning his orbs to create a shield, but thanks to the destructive power of their combined jutsu, Kiba and Akamaru tore right through it before plowing into Champ and sending him crashing through a wall of Wild Hunt's headquarters. Champ gingerly got to his feet, breathing heavily with blood pouring from his mouth as he saw Kiba and Akamaru approaching him with a feral look on their faces. Like two hounds of hell stalking their victim, they moved in for the kill. "What the fuck are you?" Champ said, fear creeping into his dark heart. "Your death." Kiba and Akamaru said before using Super Fang Wolf Fang to tear straight through Champ, spraying blood and gore everywhere and leaving a gaping hole where his large belly once was. Champ's eyes went wide before dropping to the ground, dead as a stone. Meanwhile, Enshin had recovered somewhat and was attempting to use Shamshir to carve Choji to pieces. However, with the moon not being out due to it being daylight, he was at a bit of a disadvantage with Shamshir not being at full power. Damn it, these bastards timed their attack at the worst time. With the moon not being out, I can't use my Tigu's full effect. No matter, I'll just cut him up in the old-fashioned way. Enshin thought to himself before going on the attack. Double-pronged attack, Enshin said before swiftly slashing the air twice and sending cross-shaped aerial blades at Choji. Choji smirked before using human bullet tank to turn himself into a massive ball of destruction that tore through Enshin's weakened aerial blades, much to his shock, and attempted to mow Enshin down, forcing Enshin to just barely move out of the way. "What the fuck is this guy, some kind of human pinball or something?" Enshin said in bewilderment before preparing Shamshir to attack again. He created a barrage of aerial blades that he sent at Choji, hoping to cut him down to size. But Choji once again tore right through the blades before bowling over Enshin like a pin in an alley. Enshin was once again sent flying before crashing into the ground. The former pirate weakly made his way back to his feet, angrily glaring at his new enemy. "Take your best shot, motherfucker," Enshin said defiantly, spitting at Choji while trying to hold Shamshir threateningly at the Akamichi shinobi. "Fine with me, butterfly bullet bombing," Choji said using his calorie control and concentrating all of his unique chakra into his right fist and putting his entire body weight behind it, he sent his fist crashing into Enshin's jaw with a wicked uppercut. The sheer force and power of the punch completely took Enshin's head off his shoulders, sending his head flying where it rolled over to Akamaru and was crushed by the massive Ninken. Meanwhile, Sakura was having no trouble holding off Kasmina and Dorothea. Even with the 2-on-1 advantage, the two Wild Hunt enforcers were finding themselves being severely outmatched by Sakura. Bomb Track by Rage Against the Machine begins playing. "Heh, that all you two got? Come on, I was at least hoping for a bit of a challenge," Sakura confidently said as Dorothea angrily glared at the rosette while Kasmina maintained her insane facade, smiling madly at Sakura. It's time for another performance. Let's see how you like my symphony of death," Kasmina said with a showman-like smile, striking a pose with her hand in the air and her microphone to her lips before she began singing into heavy pressure, the Tigu amplifying her voice and turning it into ultrasonic waves. Sakura punched the ground causing several large stones to fly into the air. These stones absorbed the shock waves of heavy pressure's attack and neutralized them before Sakura went on the attack, rushing at Kasmina and blasting her with a flurry of crippling punches before jacking her jaw with a solid right hook that sent her crashing into Dorothea. "Damn her," Dorothea angrily said as she got to her feet as Sakura walked up to her and she made a powerful swing at Sakura that against any other human being would have knocked them back from the strength she had thanks to her body modifications. But Sakura simply caught her fist, much to Dorothea's shock, and buried her knee into her abdomen. "You call that a punch? Let me show you how it's done," Sakura said as she pulled Dorothea towards her using the fist she still had a hold of and decked her right in the face with a vicious left cross before sending her flying with a right straight punch. Dorothea skidded across the ground like a stone across the water before crashing into a nearby tree. "You bitch, you'll pay for ruining my beautiful face," Dorothea angrily snapped as she got to her feet and Sakura raised an eye at the woman's short temper. "And people say I have a short fuse. This woman blows her top more than a volcano," Sakura thought to herself as Dorothea and Kasmina, who had also made it to her feet, prepared to attack. "Let's see how much of a cocky bitch you are after this," Dorothea said as she used a special gas that could petrify an enemy to try and stop Sakura before hopefully using Absordex to drain her of her blood. "Let's turn up the volume and sing a melody to your death." Kasmina smiled before she began singing once again into heavy pressure, this time with a higher frequency striking several stage-like poses as she sang. Sakura, knowing the gas had to be either poison or something else dangerous and knowing how damaging the sound waves could be, pulled out a scroll that Naruto had given to her and opened it. After channeling her chakra into it, a vacuum seal was activated that sucked in all the gas, as well as the sound waves. Dorothea and Kasmina barely had time to register this before Dorothea ate a kick to the face that almost took her head off, along with a devastating elbow that almost shattered her jaw, before delivering a solid jab hook uppercut combo to Kasmina, followed by grabbing both of their heads and smashing them together, nearly knocking both women out. Dorothea got up with rage in her eyes, with her face momentarily returning to her elderly appearance. She decided she was done playing games with this woman and decided to end her now. Kasmina, who had also made it to her feet, had also decided that it was time to put an end to the Rosette medic. Kasmina used her alchemy to summon a monster from her blood, while Kasmina turned up heavy pressure to full power output. Kasmina began to sing into her tegu, which produced sound waves of the highest and most damaging frequency, while Dorothea sent her monster to attack and corrode Sakura. As the sound waves and the monster closed in on Sakura, however, Sakura smirked before, to the shock of Kasmina and Dorothea, a massive humanoid avatar of chakra formed around Sakura to protect the Rosette and destroy both the sound waves and the attacking monster. Right on time, nice save Sasuke-kun, Sakura said, looking up to the last Uchiha who had arrived just in the nick of time to assist Sakura. Don't mention it, now take care of those two and let's keep moving, Sasuke said, and Sakura nodded before deciding to wrap this fight up. Sakura emerged from Sasuke's complete body Susanoo with a triumphant grin on her face, and the next thing Kasmina and Dorothea knew, the Rosette was in front of them as she punched straight through Kasmina's chest, her heart in her hand, and Kasmina violently coughed blood before collapsing over dead. Dorothea screamed in horror and fell backward and began crawling back in fear as Sakura slowly stalked her, moving in for the kill. No, please, I beg you, don't kill me. Killing me would be such a blow for all of humanity. All of my life I've been trying to find the key to immortality, and I believe it could be achieved by stealing energy from others in order to extend one's own life. Dorothea begged. So that's why you look so young, that's quite an interesting philosophy. But I'm afraid it's like the old saying goes. No one lives forever. Sakura said before continuing to move in for the kill. No, please. I don't want to die, I want to live and be young and beautiful forever. Dorothea frantically pleaded with tears in her eyes before Sakura placed her hands on her head. Sorry, but I'm not into sparing merciless sociopaths like you. So, you're gonna have to die. Sakura mercilessly said before using her strength to turn Dorothea's head 180 degrees before tearing it off completely, killing her in a snap. As for Shikamaru, he was currently locked in a battle of attrition with Aizu. Neither man was willing to give an inch, and both warriors fought with a sense of caution, as they both knew that the first person to make a mistake would pay for it with their life. I commend you, Shinobi. Your will to survive has earned my respect. Kisetsu hasn't been this excited to feed on the blood of someone in ages. Aizu said. Thanks. You're not too bad yourself. It's a shame you're gonna have to die, you would have made one hell of a ninja. Shikamaru said with a smirk. Who said I was going to be the one to die? Aizu said with a bloodthirsty grin before going on the attack. Shikamaru dodged a series of fast, lethal slashes from Kisetsu before drawing his late sensei Asuma's blades and infusing them with his chakra, using his shadow imitation shuriken technique to try and pierce Aizu's shadow and catch him in place. Aizu, understanding on instinct what the shinobi was attempting to do, blocked the blades with Kisetsu before unleashing several more slashes from the draw of his blade. Shikamaru blocked the attacks before pushing Aizu back using materialized shadows formed from his shadow sewing technique. Aizu leaped back to avoid the shadows before he was forced to block a barrage of kunai knives that were thrown at him by means of Shikamaru's shadow gathering technique that continued to push him back. Shikamaru followed up by charging at Aizu and taking a swing first at Aizu's chest with one blade before he took a swipe at Aizu's legs with the other. Aizu blocked the first strike before he jumped up and out of the way of before ending up behind Shikamaru. "I shinobi," Aizu said before swinging Kisetsu at Shikamaru's back to cut him in half where he stood. Suddenly, however, he soon found himself paralyzed and unable to move at all. He then saw, much to his shock, a series of shadows ensnare his arms and legs, causing him to drop Kisetsu. "Didn't think I saw that one coming. I was 2 steps ahead of you the whole way, Aizu, look behind you," Shikamaru said as he turned around with a smirk on his face, and Aizu looked back to see, much to his shock, a large deep crater in the ground with shadows emerging from it. "That crater," Aizu said, realization finally hitting him. "Looks familiar, doesn't it? That's because it's the same crater Sakura made when she punched the ground to block Kasmina's attack earlier during her fight." I was pushing you back towards the crater the whole time to trap you with the shadow imitation technique and kill you with the shadow neck binding technique. Well played, Shinobi. Using the art of deception to lead me to my death, your skills are indeed far superior to those of mine. As a reward, take Kisetsu with you so that it may continue to feed. Aizu offered and Shikamaru shook his head in decline. Thanks for the offer, but swordplay isn't really my style, Shikamaru said as he formed a hand sign, and a shadowed hand appeared on Aizu's neck that strangled him and broke his neck, killing him in an instant. Man, what a drag. That guy caused me to use up so much of my chakra to beat him, and we've still got so many of these bastards left to beat. Shikamaru said as he took out a cigarette and lit it using Asuma's old lighter. At the Imperial Palace GATS. Imperial Guard soldiers and bodyguards from the Imperial Fist Temple were doing all they can to contain the chaos of the invading revolutionaries. But the deadly alliance of the revolutionaries and the shinobi was proving to be far too much for even the strongest of the Empire's forces to handle. Let Me Hear You Scream by Ozzy Osbourne begins playing. These guys got the drop on us. But as long as we have the numbers advantage we should be able to wipe these rebel bastards out. One Imperial Guard said. Are you sure about that? Susanoo said as he wielded his signature Wolfang mace to cut down Imperial Guards with Negenda aiding him in his fight while Han and Rashi were wiping out Imperial Fist bodyguards left and right. Susanoo swung his mace and the blades of the weapon shredded apart a line of Imperial Guards in his path. Negenda swung a devastating blow with her prosthetic limb that took the head off one guard before kicking another guard in the chest, knocking him over before stomping on his skull with all her strength and crushing it. Susanoo, dodge, Negenda called out before launching her prosthetic limb in his direction, and Susanoo leaned backwards in a Matrix-style maneuver as the prosthetic fist went sailing over him and into the chest of an Imperial Guard that was trying to sneak attack Susanoo, killing him by stopping his heart from the massive blow to the chest. Right on target, Negenda, perfect execution. Susanoo complimented as Negenda reeled in her prosthetic limb before grabbing an Imperial Guard by the throat with her mechanical arm and throwing him over to Susanoo, who impaled the defenseless bastard with his mace before activating it, ripping him to pieces from the inside out. I'd love to see Michael Myers do something like that. Negenda smiled at her Tengu partner before he formed an annular defensive shield to guard against two charging Imperial Guards who were firing at him with blasters. Susanoo then leaped before he caught the first guard in a head scissors before snapping his neck with his legs and then crushing it on the ground with his knees. He then snared the other guard in a side headlock before viciously snapping his neck as well and then destroying it by smashing it into the ground. Negenda caught one guard with a devastating uppercut with her mechanical limb that turned his head into pulp before firing her arm once again. After catching onto a nearby statue, she swung from the structure before delivering a missile-like kick to the face of another guard that shattered his skull and killed him before he even hit the ground. Meanwhile, Han and Rashi were absolutely obliterating the bodyguards of the Imperial Fist Temple. Even the highest-ranked masters were proving to be of no match to the two powerful holders of Son Goku and Kakyo. Han, I'd say it's time we stopped playing games and got serious, Rashi said to his fellow Iwa Jinchuriki. I thought exactly, Rashi, Han said before both Jinchuriki gave each other nods of understanding, knowing they both had the same thing in mind. Soon both Jinchuriki's bodies began glowing with chakra, Rashi a red and green and Han a white and tan. Rashi's chakra began to take the shape of a long-sleeved ethereal kipao jacket with an ethereal sash around his waist, pants, fighting shoes, and ethereal ribbons around his ankles and wrists. His look was completed with a fighting headband with a Wagakur's insignia, and his eyes became yellow with white pupils like Son Goku's. Han's chakra took the shape of an ethereal long-sleeved tunic, pants, kung fu shoes, and chakra armor covering his shoulders, forearms, and hips, and a hat with the Wagakur insignia on it on his head. His eyes were also a dark blue-green with red markings under them just like Kakyo. 4 Tails chakra mode. Rashi aggressively shouted. 5 Tails chakra mode. Han calmly said. Your Tengu tricks don't scare us, rebel scum, said an Imperial Fist Master. They should, Han said before he and Rashi went on the attack again. Boil release. Unrivaled strength. Han said as he activated his unique Kekkei Genkai and released burst of steam from his chakra armor to power his attacks before nailing one bodyguard with an eruption propulsion fist that stopped his heart and sent him crashing into a wall from the force of the blow before brutally crushing another bodyguard courtesy of a devastating eruption strong foot. Han then decided to pull out a few new techniques he's been working on and deflected the strikes of an Imperial Fist Master before catching him in the sternum with his new eruption strong elbow, shattering his sternum and ribsage and causing him to drop dead as a stone, no pun intended, before Han caught the fist of another master and snapped his arm in two before blasting him with his eruption propulsion near-eyed in the face, tearing his head off in a bloody display. Rashi meanwhile was wiping out bodyguards with as much ease as his fellow Wagakur Jinchuriki. Rashi was also bringing out a few new moves of his own, using his new lava release. Great Lava Lake to create a large lake of lava that trapped and melted the bodyguards caught in it before parrying the fist of an oncoming master and using lava release. Scorching foot stomp to crush his head into the ground while the intense heat radiating off him burned several others close to him. Rashi then used his lava release. Scorching stream rock technique to burn several bodyguards alive with multiple boulders of molten rock before wiping out another set of them using his flower fruit mountain technique to bury them underneath an explosion of molten rock. Who the hell are these monsters? One bodyguard said as he and the rest of the remaining bodyguards began running away in fear from the terrifying assassins and shinobi, along with the remaining Imperial guards. Oh no you don't. Susanoo, Han, Rashi, time to end this, Nagenda said as she began channeling her life energy into Susanoo and he morphed into his Magatama manifestation mode. Meanwhile, Han and Rashi began charging up for one of the Jinchuriki's signature techniques. Aim no Murakumo, Susanoo said as he generated a very long transparent sword from energy stored in the Magatama on his chest. Hail Beast Ball. Han and Rashi said simultaneously before firing the concentrated balls of chakra at the retreating Imperial troops, while Susanoo swung his blade at the troops as well. The troops looked back in horror just in time as Susanoo's blade sliced them in half before they were blown to oblivion by the combined tailed beast balls. Good work everyone, that should allow the rest of the Revolutionary Army a clear path into the palace. Let's keep moving and find the others. We may be able to assist them. Nagenda said as they continued moving into the palace. At the capital's Graveyard. Sheil cautiously walked through the capital's graveyard as she searched for her target Seryu. Her instincts for some reason had led her here and now she began to search the area for any signs of the deranged Jaeger. She treaded carefully amongst the tombstones, with Extus ready to go at a moment's notice as a bell tolled in the background. Sheil then turned a corner and passed right by a mausoleum. Unknown to her, she just walked right into Seryu and Koro's sights as the auburn-haired former Imperial officer and her Tigu partner looked down on her from the balcony of the mausoleum, like a pair of vultures about to swoop down and devour their prey. Well look at that Koro, it's our old target. I see she's not with that other bitch, but 1 out of 2 isn't bad I guess. We'll just kill her first and then deal with her friend later. But for now, it's time to settle a little score. Koro, number 7. Seryu said before Koro bit down on her right arm before he let go, revealing a long-ranged anti-tank rifle equipped to her arm. I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. Fear the fury of justice. Number 7. Taizen's cannon of justice. Seryu said with her trademark twisted grin on her face as she fired her cannon at Sheil, who swiftly moved out of the way before looking right up at Seryu with a look of cold venom on her face. Damn it, she must have known I was here. Fine then, I'll kill her the old-fashioned way. Come on Koro buddy. Seryu said before she and Koro leaped down from the balcony of the mausoleum. You know you really need to get some new tricks. This sneak attack stuff of yours is getting old and predictable, Sheil said to Seryu who seethed from Sheil's insult. It's payback time bitch, this time you won't escape from the hands of justice. Seryu angrily said as she aimed her Taizen's cannon of justice at Sheil. Not if I have anything to say about it, she will. Yujito declared as she appeared on the balcony of the mausoleum before leaping down next to Sheil, before Seryu threateningly aimed her cannon at her. You stay the hell out of this. This is a fight between me and her, it's none of your damn business. Seryu said. The corruption of your empire just made it my damn business. Yujito defiantly stated. Fine, have it your way. If you won't step aside, then you're just as evil as her. So, you can die along with her. Seryu declared. Evil huh, you have a very twisted sense of that word. Yujito bluntly said, enraging Seryu. Shut up. I preserve justice in this empire. I fight to protect order and peace, and anyone who threatens the safety of the people will be met with divine punishment. Seryu angrily bellowed. Seryu, will you listen to yourself? You talk about justice and order and peace, yet you fight for an empire that preys on the weak and the poor. That doesn't make you a hero Seryu, it makes you a damn hypocrite and as a member of Night Raid, I refuse to allow you to get away with it any longer. Sheil firmly said before turning to Yujito. Yujito, it's time. Let's finish this bitch once and for all. Sheil said before readying Extus and Yujito extended her nails before entering her very own unique two-tails chakra mode and she became shrouded in a blue chakra shroud that took on the form of a form-fitting bodysuit with what looked like black fur-like concentrations around her collar, forearms and ankles and a kumagakure headband around her neck. Her hair was now out of her ponytail and was now longer and wavier and her eyes were mismatched like Matatabi's. Seryu, still seething from Sheil's comments about her, gave a nod to Koro, who immediately activated and grew to its giant size. Seryu readied her Taizen's cannon of justice and prepared for battle, determined to dispense her own brand of justice. As they stared each other down, the bell in the graveyard began to chime once again. For Whom the Bell Tolls by Metallica begins playing. Time to die. Seryu said with a twisted grin as she fired a destructive blast at Shield and Yujito, who quickly dodged before going on the attack. Shield and Yujito launched a pincered assault on Seryu with Shield flanking Seryu's left and Yujito flanking her right side before Yujito was intercepted by Koro. Koro launched itself at Yujito, ready to devour the two-tailed Jinchuriki whole. But Yujito, with the speed and strength of her enhanced tailed beast chakra mode, tore right through Koro in a blur with her sharpened claws. The beastly Tigu roared in pain and looked back angrily at Yujito as it began to regenerate itself. The dog-type Tigu then grew two large muscular arms and began launching a furious volley of punches at Yujito. Yujito effortlessly managed to dodge the punches before slicing off both of Koro's arms and following up with a slash across the monster's face for good measure. Koro roared in agony and anger as it venomously glared down at the pesky Catwoman, now angrier than ever. "Come on puppy, let's go," Yujito said, before deciding to change things up. She used one of her newer techniques, rolling claw to roll towards the oncoming Koro like a ball, before slashing through the dog-type Tigu like a buzzsaw. She then used a technique called Cat Flame Sparrow Fire to send a wave of searing flames shaped like a giant sparrow at Koro that burned the monster badly but didn't kill it. Koro furiously looked with the half of its body that was left at the annoying Catwoman, and now it wanted to devour and kill her worse than ever as it regenerated itself and went on the attack again. Meanwhile, Shield was heavily pressuring Seryu, who was trying to keep the violet-haired assassin at a distance. Seryu was firing off shots using her Taizen's Cannon of Justice, but Shield was able to quickly dodge each of the destructive blasts before she launched a series of high-speed stabs at Seryu with Extus, and Seryu was doing all she could to block them. "Taste my justice. Justice execution," Seryu said before attempting to shoot Shield with a gun she had stored in her opposite arm, but Shield was expecting it, leaping out of the way before swinging Extus in a decapitating strike that Seryu just managed to block with her cannon before firing off another shot that Shield managed to dodge. "This bitch is really starting to annoy me," Seryu thought to herself as she landed near Koro. "Koro, number 1, now," Seryu commanded and Koro bit down on her arm that her cannon was equipped to. When he let go, her cannon had been replaced by a large, spiked flail. "Number 1. Shinku's Bowl of Justice. Let justice crush all of evil," Seryu said with a psychotic smile as she brought down her flail to crush both Shield and Yujito. Both ladies leaped out of the way before Seryu was kicked in the abdomen by Yujito. Seryu felt all the wind being knocked out of her as she was sent crashing into a wall of the mausoleum. Seryu barely had time to recover from this before she was attacked by Shield, and she barely dodged being cut in half. "Koro, numbers 3 and 5. Seryu quickly commanded and Koro bit down on both of Seryu's arms before revealing a large sword with a giant blade on Seryu's left arm and a large drill-like spear on her right. "Number 3. Sung Dynasty Blade, number 5. Enma's Spear of Justice. Justice will always cut down evil," Seryu declared before launching her attack at Shield, swinging down with her blade while thrusting down with her spear. Shield managed to dodge, but she unknowingly had fallen right into Seryu's trap. "Gotcha, justice prevails," Seryu said with a sadistic grin as she opened her mouth, looking to shoot at Shield with a hidden gun in her mouth, while Koro prepared to attack and devour the scissor-wielding assassin. But as she fired the gun, Seryu was shocked to see Shield, who had anticipated Seryu's plan to slice through the bullet with Extus, while the on-charging Koro was blasted off course by a fireball courtesy of Yujito. "She read my attack, how is that possible?" Seryu said in disbelief, seconds before her arms, and by extension, her weapons were sliced off by Shield, leaving the psychotic Yugger in a great deal of pain. "That's it, I've had it with these two irritating bitches. I'm ending this here and now," Seryu thought to herself. "Koro, quick numbers 2, 7 and 8, Seryu said as Koro bit down on the upper half of her body. When he let go, Seryu was equipped with 4 missile turrets and a missile launcher on her opposite arm, along with her Taizen's Cannon of Justice. "Feel the power of justice. Justice volley fire," Seryu screamed before bombarding her two enemies with an explosive volley of firepower that caused a supernova of an explosion. When the explosion died down and the smoke cleared, Yujito and Shield were nowhere to be seen. "Justice is served." Seryu sadistically smiled before a blinding flash of light caused her to cover her eyes, and she looked in disbelief to see Shield charging at her with Extus alight and Yujito right behind her, with a black orb in her hand. "Extus. This is your end, Seryu," Shield declared as she charged toward the auburn-haired Yugger with a look of cold death in her eyes. "Impossible, there's no way they could have survived that. What the hell are these monsters?" Seryu said, fear creeping into her heart as she made to shoot at her attackers, but realized she was out of ammo. "Koro, Berserker mode quick," Seryu in a frenzied panic commanded as Koro evolved into its bestial form. Koro roared to stun Shield and Yujito, but Yujito had expected it, having been told by Shield of her last encounter with the beast, and quickly threw up a chakra shroud to protect the two before launching a tailed beast ball at Koro that exploded on contact and vaporized him into nothing. Koro. You bitch, you'll pay for killing my Koro. Seryu screamed in rage as she blindly charged at Yujito, completely forgetting she was virtually powerless. And she never saw Shield coming right at her until it was too late. The last thing Seryu saw was Shield coming right at her with ecstasy opened wide and a cold glare of death on her face. The next moment, Seryu Ubiquitous was dead, brutally decapitated by Shield, before her body was cleanly sliced into pieces with Shield's ecstasy, and Yujito burned the remains with a smaller version of her cat flame roaring fire technique, which also destroyed the suicide bomb in Seryu's brain. Good riddance, Shield said as she flung Seryu's blood off her tigu. She then noticed where she was standing and smiled at the grave she was standing on. Yujito, look at this. We're standing at Ogre the Demon's grave. We just killed Seryu right at the grave of her former master. Shield said. How fitting. The final resting place of the one person who was the driving force behind Seryu's corruption ends up being the place where Seryu meets her gruesome end, Yujito said. Too bad for Seryu, she died and never found out who killed her mentor. Come on, let's go and find the others. Shield said as she and Yujito took off to catch up with the rest of the team. At the COLOSSCUM. Esdeath and General Budo were leading a small troop composed of Esdeath soldiers and Imperial Guard soldiers, led by General Budo into the Colosseum, in search of the invading revolutionaries. As they entered the arena, however, there was no sign of any of them. There's no sign of those rebels. General Budo said. They're here somewhere, I can sense it, Esdeath said. Pretty sharp senses you've got then. They heard someone say before they all looked up to see Tatsumi standing on the balcony of the Emperor's skybox before leaping down fearlessly to face the two generals and their troops and drawing in Cursio's sealed keyblade, with Esdeath smiling with delight. Tatsumi, you are a bold one. As I would expect from you, my love. But I must say, a rather foolish error in judgment on your part coming alone. Esdeath said as she motioned to her troops who began closing in on Tatsumi, who smirked as Esdeath and General Budo's troops surrounded him. Who said I was here alone? Tatsumi grinned just before Esdeath's troops became trapped in sand and crushed into nothing, while what looked like a yellow blur and a blur of lightning tore down all General Budo's troops quicker than one could blink. The next moment, Gaara, Killer Bee and Leon stood beside Tatsumi ready to fight. So, you've even gone so far as to recruit shinobi from outside of the capital to aid you in this little uprising. It matters not, soon your shinobi friends will be dead and your revolutionary army's rebellion will be crushed. Esdeath said with a smirk of pure arrogance. That will never happen, Esdeath. Not as long as I'm alive. Tatsumi said, with a look of fury in his eyes, and Esdeath sinisterly smiled at Tatsumi's words. Well, in that case, there's only one solution. General Budo, you may do as you please with the other three, but Tatsumi is mine. Esdeath said with her signature psychotic smile on her face as she drew her rapier and stood ready for battle. Tatsumi took the sealed Incursio key and jabbed it into the ground. A flash of light later and he stood in Incursio's new balanced state. Leon, Gaara, Killer Bee, let me deal with Esdeath. This one's personal. Tatsumi said, and the three of them nodded, having full confidence in Tatsumi's abilities before Tatsumi and Esdeath charged at each other and began a duel to the finish. Looks like it's just you and us now, General. Gotta say, 3 against 1, not looking like good odds for you. Leon said as she cracked her knuckles in anticipation. You assume that just because you have an advantage in numbers that you'll be victorious, rebel. I've destroyed many armies of your rebellion single-handedly without an ounce of effort. General Budo confidently stated while removing his cloak, leaving him in his newly repaired battle armor. You will need more than an ounce of effort and then some if you hope to defeat the likes of us, General, Gaara said. We ain't no ordinary guys. We're shinobi, recognize. Killer Bee rhymed. Very well, this should be interesting. Then come at me, shinobi, and let's see how powerful you truly are. General Budo said as he charged up a Dramolich. Be ready, guys. Leon said as she activated Lionel and stood ready in her enhanced beast state. Of course, Gaara said as he entered his very own One-Tails chakra mode. Gaara's unique chakra shroud was brown and black and took the form of a vest, chaps, gauntlets and boots with an ethereal ankle-length tattered cloak and a Sunagaker headband on his head. His hair was also much wilder and his eyes were black and yellow like Shukaku's. Let's rock this bee. Killer Bee said before he also entered his own Jinchuriki unique 8-Tails chakra mode. Killer Bee's chakra shroud was purple and white in color and took the shape of a tank top, pants with ethereal fringes, boots, gloves, sunglasses, and a championship belt with Kumagakur's insignia. Indestructible by Disturbed begins playing. Face your fate, Budo said before shooting bolts of lightning through the ground at the 3 shinobi. Gaara formed a shield of sand to deflect the bolts when they were within range, while Leon leaped at the lightning general. She swung her claws at his neck and General Budo parried her attack before Killer Bee moved in and began attacking General Budo with his signature disturbance jutsu. The fast yet unpredictable nature of Bee's moves made it difficult for Budo to keep up with him and he soon found himself on the defensive. Killer Bee attacked with a quick 10-strike combo of successive attacks, including a right cross punch, low left leg kick, high knee strike, overhead left elbow, overhand right punch, left head kick, right body punch, right spinning back fist, left back elbow, and right straight punch. The sheer quickness and unpredictability of Killer Bee's strikes disoriented General Budo, who managed to block the first two but was bombarded by all the remaining strikes. Leon followed up by catching the general with a slash to the face that left a gash in the top of his head, followed by a powerful punch to the ribs that sent him back a few feet. The general was then sent crashing back into the wall courtesy of a combination of a sand bullet by Gaara and Killer Bee running forward before leaping and delivering a brutal lightning release charged knee to his face in a new move he dubbed the running knee. "I'm done playing games with you revolutionary worms, it's time to get serious." And now angered General Budo said as he rose to his feet and began using a Dramolich to create a giant orb of lightning. "Undershot," General Budo said before firing the orb of lightning at his enemies. Gaara countered it by creating a similar large orb of compressed sand for one of his newer techniques. "Sand cannon," Gaara said as he launched the orb of sand at the orb of lightning. The two orbs collided and exploded on impact in a great display of lightning and sand. "So, you managed to block that, did you? Well, let's see if you can block this," Budo shouted before using a Dramolich to manipulate the weather and create a thunderstorm. Killer Bee charged himself with lightning release energy and prepared himself for the upcoming attack. "Lightning crash," Budo shouted before summoning charged lightning from the sky that he sent toward his targets. Killer Bee raised his hands and coated himself with lightning release chakra over his Jinchuriki chakra shroud. The lightning from General Budo's attack was absorbed by Killer Bee and channeled into energy by Killer Bee. "Strike like lightning, cool like rain. Look out, General Bad Guy, cuz here comes the pain." Killer Bee rhymed before he sped towards General Budo, and before he could react the general was taken off his feet by a powerful lightning release. Lariat by Killer Bee. The move knocked the air out of the lightning general and turned him inside out. He barely had time to recover from this before his legs were caught by Gaara's sand-binding coffin before he was bombarded by Gaara's sand hail. He was then caught with a head-turning kick to the face by Leon that miraculously he somehow managed to survive. "You think this will slow me down? It will take more than this to stop me, rebels," Budo said, his anger having grown before he used Advent of the Thunder Emperor to once again manipulate the weather and summon several pillars of lightning. Killer Bee took out Samehada and skillfully cut through the pillars of lightning before swinging Samehada at General Budo just as Leon lunged at him from his opposite side. General Budo knocked Leon back with a blast of lightning before barely catching Samehada and halting its momentum with his impressive strength. Leon, seeing an opening, sprang at General Budo once again. Just as she did that, Killer Bee launched a jet of Gyuki's ink at General Budo to blind the powerful general before Leon emerged from the cloud of ink to smash the blinded general in the face with a bone-crunching punch that sent him flying backward. Gaara, who had been sitting back and allowing his partners to handle all of the physical work, then sprang into action by sending his sand at General Budo and trapping his legs once again with his sand-binding coffin before using Sand Waterfall Funeral to brutally break them. Budo's anger rose to critical levels after being winded by Leon and Gaara. He's decided he was done dealing with these rebel nuisances and it was time to put an end to this battle. With that in mind, General Budo stood, despite his legs being completely broken, and began charging a Dramolich with huge amounts of lightning energy for its trump card. "Solid shooter," General Budo shouted before he shot a black beam of lightning energy at his three opponents. Killer Bee once again stood in the path of the attack and extended his hands. "There's no way you can take that attack head on. It's suicide if you even try it," General Budo said, and no sooner had those words left his mouth did a barrier of sand formed around Killer Bee to cushion most of the blast, while the rest of it was absorbed by Killer Bee and converted into energy for a new attack. How is that possible?" General Budo said in disbelief before he was caught in a vortex of sand and compressed sand bullets in one of Gaara's newer techniques. "Sandstorm Bee, he's all yours," Gaara said, and Killer Bee nodded before coating his Jinchuriki unique shroud in lightning release chakra once again and ran into the vortex and grabbed General Budo. He then proceeded to lift him up before brutally slamming him down with a vicious Liger bomb that instantly killed the general upon impact. "Who taught you how to use the Liger bomb, Killer Bee?" Gaara asked the Eight Tails Jinchuriki as he rejoined them. "My bro taught me the moves, he helped teach me my new style and groove," Killer Bee said. Leon grinned at her shinobi allies. "These guys are the real deal and then some." No wonder they're friends of Naruto's. Leon thought to herself. Well, we've dealt with General Budo, should we intervene and assist Tatsumi in his fight with General Esdeath? Gaara asked Leon as they watched him duel with a ruthless ice general, and Leon surprisingly shook her head. Nah, Tatsumi can handle himself. Plus, he said he wanted us to leave Esdeath to him, so let's let him handle things for now. In the meantime, let's go and see who else needs any help elsewhere. Leon said, and the two Jinchuriki nodded before the three of them took off, leaving Tatsumi to duel with Esdeath alone. At the Imperial Palace training grounds. Wave frantically searched the area for his beloved Kurum. He knew what she was intending to do, and he was determined to stop her from going through with it. He felt that if he didn't stop her, Kurum would end up senselessly throwing away her own life, and that was something he wanted to avoid happening at all costs. Kurum, where are you? Wave called out before he turned to see Yugura and Mine standing in his path. I'd be more worried about what's going to happen to you if I were you, Yugura said as he stepped forward and drew his club. I don't know who you are, but all I know is that you're in my way. Now stand aside. Wave demanded as he drew the key to Grand Chariot. Sorry, but that's out of the question for you. You see, we're here to make sure you're not. Mine said while readying Pumpkin. I don't have time for this, one of my comrades is in danger and I have to stop her, Wave yelled. For you, danger's standing right in front of you, Yugura replied as he began glowing with chakra. Fine, if you won't step aside I'll just move you out of my way. Wave growled as he jabbed Grand Chariot sword key into the ground and a blue flash of light later, he stood in his armored state. You're more than welcome to try, Mine said as she modified Pumpkin into its machine gun mode while Yugura began entering his new Three Tails chakra mode. Yugura's new tailed beast mode was a red and grey chakra shroud that took on the shape of a kimono top and hakama, boots, and knee and right shoulder pauldrons in the shape of turtle shells. He also wore a Kurigakure pendant around his neck and his eyes were now red and yellow like Asobu's. The three combatants stood at the ready as they prepared to fight. Shadow Moses by Bring Me the Horizon begins playing. Come on. Wave said as he drew Grand Chariot spear and charged his two adversaries. He clashed his spear against Yugura's club and began to force the Three Tails Jinchuriki back with his unique martial arts skills. Mine cracked off a barrage of shots at Wave that he easily managed to deflect with Grand Chariot's armor. Deciding to change things up, Mine quickly changed Pumpkin to long barrel mode before going on the attack. She swung Pumpkin at Wave's legs just as she fired the weapon and he was forced to quickly leap back to avoid having his legs cut off by the blast from Mine's Tigu. Wave then brought up his spear to deflect an overhead strike from Yugura's club before knocking the club out of the way and blitzing forward. Yugura quickly recovered and barely avoided being speared by Wave before striking him in the back with his coral palm. While the move knocked Wave back a few feet as the coral from Yugura's attack began to consume him, he simply ripped through the material just before dodging a shot from Mine. But Mine wasn't done yet, she leaped forward and swung Pumpkin at Wave's chest while firing, looking to slice him in half with Pumpkin's power. Wave leaped out of the way of the destructive blast before knocking Mine to the ground with a punch to the back before focusing on Yugura. Wave feinted to the left of the Jinchuriki for an attack, but as Yugura went to block his attack, he swung back around with his spear and caught Yugura right in the ribs, sending him flying a few feet. This guy is stronger than I thought. Yugura thought to himself before righting himself and going on the attack again. He decided to go deep into his own bag of tricks and pull out a few new moves of his own as he began running through Hand Seals. Water release. Rising tide. Yugura said as he slammed his hands onto the ground, which caused a giant tsunami of water to erupt from the ground and surge towards Wave, who was forced to stop dead in his tracks at the oncoming tidal wave. Having nowhere to go and no way to block the attack, he simply braced himself as the giant tsunami came crashing down on him and engulfed him. Wave survived the watery onslaught, but barely. He had little time to recover before he was slammed into by Yugura, who was in his transformed Jinchuriki state as Asobu and has used Shadow Stroke to run him down like roadkill. Wave was reeling, but he wasn't out of it yet as Yugura prepared to attack him again using Leaping Bullet Shell Tower to curl himself into a ball and bounce himself towards Wave. Wave waited until the last possible minute to leap out of the way of the falling Jinchuriki. As he did so, however, he saw Mine diving with him with Pumpkin in sniper mode aimed right at him, charged and ready to fire. It was then that Wave realized he'd been lured into a trap. "Got you now, say goodbye Navy boy," Mine said with a look of murderous glee on her face as she fired Pumpkin and the blast hit Wave dead center in the chest, knocking him back into a nearby castle wall that collapsed on him on impact. "Too easy," Mine said while blowing the smoke off Pumpkin's barrel and Yugura looked at where Wave had landed before his eyes widened in shock. "Mine wait, it's not over yet," Yugura said before the rubble exploded and a now irate Wave emerged from the debris. "You thought that would keep me down? I'm not about to die just yet. Not when I have someone who's depending on me." Wave declared before angrily charging his two enemies once again, this time focusing on Mine. Mine, sensing the danger of the oncoming wave, used it to her advantage as she fired off a powerful blast of energy at the oncoming wave. Wave dodged the lethal blast of energy and charged towards Mine with pure anger and malice in his eyes. Mine saw this and began panicking as she fired off another shot that Wave dodged yet again, before delivering a brutal punch to Mine's ribs. The force of the blow knocked the air out of Mine, along with cracking her ribs, sending the pink-haired sniper into the air and crashing back down to earth. As Wave closed in on the downed Mine, Yugura intercepted him by using his water release. Water mirror technique to reflect Wave's attack and counter it. As the water reflection of Wave dissipated, Yugura used another one of his newer techniques, water release. Tombakiri, to create an intricate spear of water before launching it at Wave with his club. Wave in response launched his own spear at the oncoming water spear. The two spears collided and destroyed each other on impact. As the two spears imploded, Wave, seeing his chance, leaped into the air as he prepared to end this battle with his signature technique. Grand Fall. Wave shouted before performing a powerful drop kick, creating two floating matters to increase the speed and strength of the move. Wave crashed into the ground, creating a seismic earth-shattering wave that forced Yugura to have to shield a defenseless Mine from the impact. When the dust from the impact settled, Yugura and Mine were both down, with the impact having damaged Yugura so much he had lost his tailed beast cloak. Wave then landed in front of them and raised his hand, seemingly to land the finishing blow as Yugura and Mine glared at him defiantly. "It's over," Wave said before lowering his hand and deactivating his armor to the shock of his two opponents. "You had us," Mine incredulously said, not understanding why a member of the Empire would hesitate to kill them. "I know, but like I said before, I'm not interested in doing the Empire's dirty work anymore. I only want to save my Kurum," Wave said, and Mine looked skeptical at him. "If that's the case, why go so far as to use your strongest move against us like that? You could have killed us both," Mine shot back. "If I remember correctly, you just blasted me into a wall that collapsed several pounds of debris on top of me. So technically, you tried to kill me first," Wave countered, and Yugura nodded at his reasonably sound answer. "Mine, let's let him go. His loyalty is not with the Empire, it's with the woman he loves," Yugura said, and Mine nodded as Wave put away the sword key to Grand Chariot before running off to find Kurum. "Are you sure that was a good idea, Yugura?" Mine said as she watched Wave run off, still slightly skeptical of Wave's sudden defection from the Empire, and Yugura nodded in assurance. "Yes, as a former leader of my ninja village, let's just say I have good instincts for things like this. Come on, we should try and catch up with the others," Yugura said, and Mine nodded in agreement before they both took off. "Alright, I've had to cut this chapter short for now. I'd actually had this chapter much longer than this before I realized I was up to over 22,000 words. Realizing it would be unfair to make all of you read one big chapter with that many words, I've decided to divide this chapter into two separate chapters. But don't worry, I'm almost finished with the second half of this chapter. I'm putting the finishing touches on it, and, if I work fast, hopefully, I can finish it before the end of the weekend. Now, I wanted to take a moment to break down each of the fights in this chapter in order, beginning with the first one. I hope everyone enjoyed seeing Wild Hunt getting absolutely mauled by Sakura and Naruto's clique, as I call them. And don't worry about Sayara, I have big plans for him in part 2 of this chapter with Sasuke. I hope everyone loved how I intentionally killed off Champ first and have zero regrets doing so, and the way I did it, having Kiba and Akamaru drill a hole in his gut, put a sick smile on my face. I also got a kick out of Enshin's death at Choji's hands. I actually had a little help with that one, tph. That death was inspired by Julius, which is pretty damn ironic. I refuse to explain why, getting his head knocked off by Jason in Friday the 13th Part V. I even had Enshin use Julius's final line to Jason at Choji. "Take your best shot, motherfucker." ETW, for anyone who caught it, Kismina and Dorothea's deaths were also inspired by Friday the 13th kills. Kismina's death was inspired by Alan Hawes' death at the beginning of Friday the 13th Part Vi. Jason Lives, and Dorothea's death was inspired by Sissy Baker's death from the same movie. Also, quick shout out to my good friend FICTIONELEMENT777 for his help in pitching the idea for Sakura using seals to negate the effects of Kismina's Tigu and Dorothea's gas. Also, thanks to him for pitching the idea for Shikamaru using traps to defeat Aizu. I couldn't have made it past that battle without you, man, you're a lifesaver. Now onto the battle against the Imperial Guard and the Imperial Fist bodyguards. I decided to let Najenda cut loose here a little bit since we don't really get the chance to see what she can do in the manga, and it's a shame since she's still supposed to be a badass even with her injuries. Concerning the designs for Han and Rashi's tailed beast modes, Han's was inspired by Akira Yuki's sea costume from Virtua Fighter 5, crossed with the armor from Raiden's dark costume in Mortal Kombat X. As for Rashi, his tailed beast mode was based on real-life Shaolin Wushu Kung Fu martial arts masters. As for Han and Rashi's new attacks, Han's Eruption Strong Elbow and Eruption Propulsion Knee are exactly what the names imply, they're powerful elbow and knee strikes, enhanced by Han's Boil Release, to give his attacks added power and velocity. As for Rashi, his Lava Release. Great Lava Lake was inspired by actual lava lakes of molten lava, yes, that's an actual thing, look it up, and his Lava Release. Scorching Foot Stomp is basically a stomp variation of his Lava Release. Scorching Armored Fist. Now for the battle that everyone I'm sure wanted to see. Seiryu vs Shield and Yujito. Now if you'll recall, I said quite clearly in the last chapter that Seiryu would pay for what she did to Shield in the worst way possible. Well folks, guess what, I wasn't lying, was I. Not only did she and her little dog of a Tigu get absolutely curb stomped in this fight, but as another fuck you to Seiryu and an even further twist of the knife in her gut, I made sure that Yujito and Shield completely no-sold all of Seiryu's moves to the point of making her look incredibly weak and ineffective, and I made sure that her death wasn't just bad, it was downright brutal. She gets beheaded, her body gets sliced to pieces, and then what's left of her is incinerated, leaving nothing behind. And as an even more fitting end to her, not only does she die at the grave of her former master, but I made sure that Shield was the one who landed the killing blow. Also, notice how Shield says good riddance instead of her usual I'm sorry after killing Seiryu. That's to show that for once, she has absolutely no remorse for killing Seiryu. Payback is a bitch. BTW, Yujito's tailed beast mode is a callback to one of my earlier stories involving her, in which her tailed beast mode was inspired by my all-time favorite comic book, anti-heroine Felicia Hardy aka Black Cat. Concerning her new attacks, her Rolling Claw is based on Street Fighter character Vega's Rolling Crystal Flash, and her Cat Flame Sparrow Fire is a Sparrow variant of her Cat Flame Roaring Fire. Now as for the battle with Leon, Killer Bee, Gaara and General Budo, before I get started analyzing that fight, I wanted to point out something. It's something I'm wondering if anyone has stopped and thought about since I announced these lineups for these battles way back ages ago. You have a 3-on-1 fight between a guy who almost exclusively uses lightning as his form of attack and Budo going up against two guys in Gaara and Killer Bee, one whose offense revolves around the use of magnetized sand and the other whose offense mostly revolves around lightning-based moves. In retrospect, how the hell did any of you even think when you saw this matchup that General Budo ever had a chance? He didn't. To be honest, he's lucky I decided to let the fight go on as long as it did because I didn't want to cheat you guys out of a good fight. Now as for the fight itself, concerning the new moves from Gaara and Killer Bee, I had always planned to give Killer Bee the Liger Bomb at some point in my stories, and I felt that now was as good a time as any. As for the other new move he pulled out in this match, the running knee, any wrestling fan should know where that comes from. And no marks, Daniel Bryan did not invent the move, Kenta, aka Hideo Itami, was doing it first long before Bryan. As for Gaara's new moves, Sand Cannon is basically a more powerful version of Sand Bullet, and Sand Storm is pretty much what it says it is. A storm of sand with compressed sand bullets, mixed in to deal extra damage. As for Gaara and Killer Bee's tailed beast modes, I based Gaara's around two sources. Original prototype concept art for Gaara and the Outlaws of the Old West. As for Killer Bee, his tailed beast mode is based on Kevin Nash's Diesel character and is a nod to parts of Killer Bee's character, being loosely based off of pro wrestling. BTW, for anyone worried about Tatsumi and Esdeath, don't. You'll see them in the next chapter when they have their fight then, so just be patient for now. Now as for Wave's fight with Mine and Yagura. First off, you may have noticed that Wave was the only person to win his fight. Now, this may be a bit bothersome to some, but if so then let me pose a few questions to you. Are we forgetting that this is the same Wave who once took on 3 members of Night Raid in Mine, Akame and Lubbock at the same time, while easily holding his own? And was later referred to by the 3 as being, and I quote, the 3 of them. A force of nature. Are we forgetting that this is the same Wave who is the only character to successfully dual-wield 2 Tigu and did so rather easily, despite Esdeath having stated that wielding more than 1 Tigu would destroy the wielder's body even if they are an experienced user? Are we forgetting that this is the same Wave that kicked Sierra's ass one-on-one in a hand-to-hand fight, despite that being the specialty of Sierra and being, in all honesty, outclassed in hand-to-hand skill? And most of all, are we forgetting that this is the same Wave who is the only person throughout the entire series to have landed a clean, direct and decisive blow on goddamn Akame? Come on now, if all that, plus the fact that Wave is supposed to be on the same level of power as Tatsumi doesn't tell you that Wave can stand up to a member of Night Raid and a Jinchuriki and win, what does? As for Yugura's tailed beast mode, that was inspired by modern bijutsu masters and was done because of Yugura's skills with his club staff. As for his new attacks, water release. Rising tide is, as I'm sure you all figured out, inspired by real-life tsunamis. Well, water release. Tombakiri was inspired by the legendary Japanese spear of the same name from Japanese folklore. I actually have to thank my good friend MINDMASTER123 for pitching the suggestion for a spear-based jutsu, thanks for that, man. Now I wanted to take a moment and discuss the song choices for this chapter. Sleep Now in the Fire and Bomb Track. I knew before I started writing this chapter that I was going to use songs by Rage Against the Machine since their socio-political lyrics fit so well with Akame Georgia Kill. These two songs are no exception, and that's why I chose them. But Sleep Now in the Fire, covering the themes of greed in politics and criticism of actions taken by the government in wartime. And Bomb Track, detailing the political struggle of revolutionaries against an oppressive US-backed government. Now just look at those two themes and tell me those don't fit Akame Georgia Kill. Let me hear you scream. Now this was an interesting choice for two reasons. One, because of the lyrical content. Which is all about yelling and letting out all of that built-up angst to scream for what you believe in. The second is for the reason why I picked this song. You see, when this song first debuted in the US on an episode of CSI New York, it was used in a prison riot scene. The producers of the show later said about the scene. We were looking for something high energy and irreverent to sell the madness of a prison riot. We immediately responded to the new. That was my main motivation for choosing this song for this scene, to sell the madness of the attack on the imperial capital by the Revolutionary Alliance, much like the producers of CSI New York sold the madness of the prison riot with the song For Whom the Bell Tolls. This was a song choice I had decided long before I started writing. Since Metallica is one of my favorite bands, and For Whom the Bell Tolls is a song about the novel of the same name, about the dishonor of modern warfare and the protagonist's imminent doom during the bloody Spanish Civil War, I felt there wasn't a perfect song to literally announce the impending death of Seryu for this scene. At this point, there are some that may feel that I'm just being to Seryu, to which I say to them. After all the horrible shit she pulled, she deserves that and so much more, so fuck off. Indestructible. Now this was actually a last-minute switch. When I realized I didn't have a Disturbed song, I said to myself, well, that won't do. And as soon as I started going through my library of Disturbed songs, I knew there was only one song that would fit with the war theme of Akame ga Kill. And that's this title track from Disturbed's 2008 album that serves as a battle cry for soldiers going into battle and is my personal favorite Disturbed song. Shadow Moses. I knew I wanted to have at least one Metallica song in my battle scenes, so I decided what better song to go with than the Metal Gear Solid inspired track from Bring Me the Horizon's fourth studio album, Senpidinal. What if Naruto was a bijuu warrior in Akame ga Kill? End here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.